Chapter 2028 Source of Energy. Jian Wushuang, Abysmal Saint Master, and Great Emperor Ji Luo became quiet, but there was a great commotion from the bottom of their hearts. The Supreme Emperor Stone, in the golden whirlpool in front of them, was too huge. It was a total of 100 zhang tall. It simply equated to a huge mountain, according to East Royal Emperor. A nail-sized Supreme Emperor Stone contained pure divine power of a Sir God. Just how terrifyingly great was the pure divine power contained in the Supreme Emperor Stone that was 100 zhang tall? Just how unbelievable was it? In ancient times, only the top sects and forces had the ability to use Supreme Emperor Stone in their great formation as a source of energy. Back then, the huge Supreme Emperor Stone in Imperial Peak that 3 Emperors World treated as holy crystal, in addition to the surrounding gold whirlpool, was obviously a method to run a great formation. Could it be? Jian Wushuang suddenly thought of a possibility. Jian Wushuang, Emperor Bai, and the others discussed, and thought that if the great formation outside the dark millstone could engulf such a large area and still remain that powerful, it definitely requires an abundant source of energy. The Supreme Emperor Stone is most likely the crucial part to run the formation of the dark millstone, Emperor Jiao Qiao said. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. He had already thought of the same thing. Any great formation would definitely require the support of pure energy. For example, the huge formation that was set up by his master in the ancient battlefield actually depended on the space-time storm around it as its energy source. It was naturally not easy to maintain the great formation around the dark millstone. That was impressive. However, the Supreme Emperor Stone absolutely had the power to maintain the revolving dark millstone. In other words, as long as we can destroy the huge Supreme Emperor Stone, the great formation around the dark millstone will collapse entirely. Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows. Theoretically, yes. Besides, there's no need to destroy the Supreme Emperor Stone. As long as the connection between the Supreme Emperor Stone and the dark millstone is destroyed, which is the golden whirlpool around the Supreme Emperor Stone, the dark millstone is supposed to stop after the Supreme Emperor Stone failed to provide it pure energy, Emperor Jiao Qiao said. If so, let's hurry up and figure out a way to destroy the Supreme Emperor Stone and the golden whirlpool, Abysmal Saint Master said. But Jian Wushuang shook his head. We have yet to confirm that the Supreme Emperor Stone is the main factor that drives the dark millstone. On top of that, even if it is real, it won't be so easy to destroy it. We have to take our time and plan meticulously. That's true, Abysmal Saint Master, and the other 2 Great Emperor nodded faintly, and they eventually calmed down. Jian Wushuang, who stood before the golden whirlpool, maintained a casual manner. He looked around casually, and he had spread his soul power long ago. The golden whirlpool could be said to be the most important place in Imperial Peak. The guards there are naturally strict. Not only were there deacon guards from Imperial Cabinet in sight, but there were also 3 experts of Great Emperor level hidden around to keep watch of this place. Once there is any movement, the 3 Great Emperors would take action immediately. Besides, the Imperial Cabinet on the top of Imperial Peak isn't far away from here. Once there is movement, there will be a large number of experts from Imperial Cabinet to those who were cultivating on Imperial Peak. In a short time, it could at least gather 7 to 8 Great Emperors. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. Imperial Peak was the most important place in 3 Emperors' world. The old lair of Imperial Cabinet was located there. How easy would it be to destroy the Supreme Emperor Stone there? Don't be in a hurry. Now that I am in Imperial Peak, I'll stay in Imperial Peak for a while. I will ask around for more information, and we will find a chance to take action. Jian Wushuang said. The other 3 Great Emperors nodded simultaneously too. They also knew that there were some things that couldn't be rushed through. They had to take one step at a time. They had to have a well-planned strategy before taking action. Otherwise, not only would their trip be into vain, their lives would be at stake too. Then, Jian Wushuang stayed in Imperial Peak. From the outside, he looked like he was working hard to improve his power and using the cultivation resources. However, he was actually making friends with some other experts and asking salacious questions. In the blink of an eye, half a year passed. With his hard work from the past 6 months, they came to a conclusion. The Emperor Supreme Rock was really the most important treasure in Three Emperors' world. It was also the source of energy in Three Emperors' world. Hence, it would naturally play a pivotal role in operating the Dark Millstone. As long as they could destroy the Emperor Supreme Rock, the Great Formation outside the Dark Millstone would collapse directly. Target locked. Now it's time to figure out the hows. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. In Imperial Peak, we will not have any external assistance, nor will we have any stratagem or means that we could use. Hence, the only thing that we have an option for is the time to take action. The other three great emperors nodded simultaneously. The Emperor Supreme Rock was within the Golden Whirlpool. There was no doubt that they could only barge into the Golden Whirlpool and take thunderous measures if they wanted to destroy it. They had only one method to hand. Similarly, they definitely would have to deal with the hindrance by the top experts within Three Emperors' world. They could only seek to have absolutely perfect timing. I just received news that Imperial Peak will throw a doctrine propagation ceremony in 20 years. Besides the three great emperors guarding the Golden Whirlpool, the other great emperor experts in Imperial Cabinet will attend the ceremony personally, while all cultivators in Imperial Peak will gather in Doctrine Propagation Palace. The palace was quite a distance away from the Golden Whirlpool. Even if a great emperor rushed in at full speed personally, I reckon it will take at least a dozen breaths of time to rush back. If we were to opt to take action on Doctrine Propagation Ceremony Day, the success rate would be much higher, Jian Wushuang said. Imperial Cabinet was not too far away from the Golden Whirlpool. They could hurry over in 5 breaths of time with the traveling speed of a great emperor. Compared to the dozen breaths time from Doctrine Propagation Palace, there would be an extra 7 to 8 breaths of time. Don't belittle the 7 to 8 breaths of time. The success rate will go up tremendously with the extra breaths given to Jian Wushuang and the 3 great emperors. If so, let's do it on that day. It's only 20 years away. Although Eternal Chaotic World is now in danger, we can afford to wait another 20 years, Abysmal Saint Master said. We agree too. Great Emperor Ji Luo and Emperor Jiu Qiao nodded in agreement too. Before long, the 4 of them came to a mutual agreement to take action at the Doctrine Propagation Ceremony happening 20 years later. Chapter 2029. Finally succeed. 20 years. Jian Wushuang couldn't help but clench his fists. 20 years happened to be what he needed then. He was very close to the completion of Immemorial Celestial Body at the beginner level. 20 years would be enough for him to complete the first volume of Immemorial Celestial Body. Let's begin. Jian Wushuang seized the time to cultivate. Of course, besides cultivating the Immemorial Celestial Body, he would symbolically walk around the Opportunity Lands occasionally. In Imperial Peak, there was peace and quiet. At least it looked peaceful. With Imperial Cabinet attending the garrison duty personally, the experts and geniuses in Imperial Peak obeyed the rules, and no one acted recklessly. The time flew past. In the blink of an eye, there was only 1 month left until Doctrine Propagation Ceremony. Jian Wushuang was in the secret room in the pavilion he stayed in, Virum. There was a billowing divine power that surrounded Jian Wushuang's divine body. On the surface of Jian Wushuang's body, there was a faint black jade luster. The black jade luster even substantiated and formed armor. The first volume of Immemorial Celestial Body completed. Jian Wushuang opened his eyes, and there was light glistening in his eyes. At the same time, his divine body and divine power were experiencing a drastic change. Immemorial Celestial Body was a secret skill of body refinery. Its biggest function was to strengthen one's divine body. However, his divine power would improve too. For instance, Jian Wushuang's divine body and divine power were greatly affected. His divine power, which was originally fierce and pure and not inferior to a great emperor's, was improving tremendously. After a short while, it had completely transformed. As the divine power transformed, Jian Wushuang couldn't help but clench his fists and feel the billowing strength in him. Amazing! My divine power should have increased by 3 times. Jian Wushuang's eyes were wide open, and he was shocked. He knew that his divine power would improve tremendously when he completed the first volume of Secret Skill of Immemorial Celestial Body, but he had never expected the improvement to be so drastic. 3 times the power. When one's power reached Great Emperor level, it could be considered a great improvement if his power were to increase by 30%, let alone the fact that he improved by 3 times. In terms of divine power strength, he was 3 times stronger than an ordinary great emperor. In addition to his ancient tribe bloodline power, his power was definitely 4 to 5 times stronger than an ordinary great emperor's. How great was the difference? It meant that he could absolutely suppress any ordinary great emperor, like breaking a piece of dead wood in terms of strength and power. In Sanctuary Alliance, putting Emperor by his side, the next strongest person is Red Dragon King. Even if he were to perform his full power using his unique bloodline, he would at most be 3 to 4 times stronger than an ordinary great emperor. Hence, I am stronger by a notch in terms of power. Jian Wushuang was thrilled. The tremendous improvement in strength power also signified his improvement in overall power. Now, he was weaker in comprehension towards doctrine. However, he could still fight against the top few in Sanctuary Alliance. He was fearless against Red Dragon King and Abysmal Saint Master. In terms of power and strength, he might even have the upper hand. In terms of divine power itself, the improvement was already so significant. Immemorial Celestial Body was actually greatest at improving one's divine body. Jian Wushuang immediately started to inspect his divine body. His divine power was made of pure divine power, which was already powerful. Then, as he completed the first volume of Immemorial Celestial Body, the surface of his skin was faintly covered by a layer of jade black armor. The durability of his divine body had been through a drastic change. Such a divine body was far beyond Jian Wushuang's imagination. Even Jian Wushuang himself didn't know how powerful his divine body was. However, he had a feeling that if he were to be hemmed in by the 6 great emperors again, besides Lingzong, who was the strongest among the 6 great emperors, the other 6 could hardly hurt him. Forget about being surrounded for 8 breaths. He could even survive 20 or even 30 breaths. His divine body wouldn't be damaged badly, and he wouldn't expend much divine power either. With such a powerful divine body, in addition to the defense power of 5 gem armor and my perfect chaotic divine body, I will instantly recover my divine body via divine power. My survival ability or even attack resistant ability are absolutely out of this world. Jian Wushuang beamed with joy. He was absolutely confident that besides Emperor Bai, who was an inverse cultivator like him on the final stage of the 7th step in inverse cultivation, there was no one else who could surpass him in terms of defense skill. He was simply unkillable. The moment I successfully cultivated Immemorial Celestial Body, My overall power increased tremendously. Now I should begin preparations, Jian Wushuang muttered, and instantly communicated with his team members in Blood Mountain Sword. Great Emperor Ji Luo, I am going to walk along the border of the great formation around Imperial Peak. You see if you could make a space-time tunnel from here. Great Emperor Ji Luo nodded faintly. 1 month later, the doctrine propagation ceremony would take place, and they intended to take action on the same day. Before they could do that, they had to consider their route of escape. Regardless of if they could destroy the Emperor's Supreme Rock or the surrounding Golden Whirlpool, they had to be prepared to leave Imperial Peak and Imperial City. Jian Wushuang maintained the disguise of a brawny man who was casual in manner. He came to the border of the great formation that engulfed the entire Imperial Peak and walked around casually along the border of the formation. He looked like he was taking a leisurely walk, but in actual fact, Great Emperor Ji Luo in Blood Mountain Sword was inspecting the great formation and surrounding space-time. He walked for over 10 days straight while Great Emperor Ji Luo continued to study, but they didn't come up with any conclusion. The 4 of them weren't in a hurry, though. Just then, Jian Wushuang, who was casually walking along the border of the great formation, suddenly looked up. He saw 2 figures flying towards him. The aura that the 2 figures carried was only in early-stage chaotic realm. Plus, they looked extremely strong. One of them happened to be Lin Tianhao, who shared a long-standing friendship with Jian Wushuang. The 2 of them noticed Jian Wushuang's existence and immediately walked over. Isn't this our show? What are you doing? Lin Tianhao squinted his eyes, and there was a glimpse of coldness in his eyes. Jian Wushuang crossed his hands before his chest and pouted. What does it have to do with you? Lin Tianhao's face grew grave. He was used to Jian Wushuang's rude replies. On the contrary, the handsome young man next to him said, Tianhao, who is this? He seems to be very arrogant. Chapter 2030, the ceremony began. Arrogant. Lin Tianhao smirked. This person had called himself Shou. He came to Imperial Peak in the same batch of ranking competition as me. Not only is he arrogant, he is also unrestrainedly arrogant. I had an argument before. I told him my identity, but he didn't care about Lin family at all. Oh, the handsome young man's gaze grew cold. Didn't care about Lin family? One should know that the handsome man was from Lin family too. You are Shou, right? As you don't care about Lin family, I believe that you must be very powerful. As we have crossed paths today, why not make a trip to the battlefield together? The handsome young man asked in a deep voice. Battlefield? Jian Wushuang thought. It was a place designated for battle in Imperial Peak. The rules at Imperial Peak were strict, but in the battlefield, as long as both parties agreed, they could fight all they wanted. Just a battle anyway. Do you think I'm afraid of you? But I am very busy. I have no time to waste. So, I'll take to you next time. Then, Jian Wushuang turned to leave without looking at their response. He left very quickly, as though he were running for his life. Lin Tianhao and the handsome young man saw his response, and they looked at him in disdain. This B***starred was so arrogant back in Imperial City, and he didn't respect anyone at all. Now he is in Imperial Peak and realized that there are many experts who are far more powerful than him. He's now well-behaved. Lin Tianhao scoffed. Humph. He didn't dare to take the challenge, but he sounded like he wouldn't yield. Rubbish. The young man still looked in disdain. The 2 of them didn't bother much and left very quickly. In a corner near the border of the great formation, Jian Wushuang hid in secret. He let out a breath of relief when he saw Lin Tianhao and the handsome young man making a move to leave. Sword Emperor, how do you feel being cornered by 2 young men at the early stage chaotic realm? Great Emperor Ji Luo joked in Blood Mountain Sword. Jian Wushuang rubbed his nose and smiled helplessly. If it wasn't because he had concerns and he couldn't expose his overly powerful strength, he could have killed the two of them with a wave. However, he could only flee because of his concerns. He couldn't just take the challenge. Great Emperor Ji Luo, is there a result? Jian Wushuang asked. Yes, there is. Great Emperor Ji Luo nodded. Abysmal Saint Master and Emperor Jiu Qiao looked at Great Emperor Ji Luo. I inspected carefully, but the space-time surrounding Imperial Peak is very unique. It might be because of the Great Formation covering it. It would be extremely difficult to open up a space-time tunnel that connects to the outside world from inside Imperial Peak. With my power alone, it will be impossible, Great Emperor Ji Luo said. Impossible. Jian Wushuang, Abysmal Saint Master, and Emperor Jiu Qiao looked shocked. Calm down. Great Emperor Ji Luo smiled. With my power alone, it is naturally impossible. Fortunately, I once obtained a unique space-time treasure when I wandered in an ancient battlefield. With the assistance of the treasure, I should be able to open up a space-time tunnel. That's great. Abysmal Saint Master immediately beamed with joy. Ji Luo, I knew you would have a way. Emperor Jiu Qiao looked at Great Emperor Ji Luo. Although Great Emperor Ji Luo wasn't powerful, Emperor Bai wouldn't hesitate to put him in the 4 members experts troupe. Plus, there was no objection from any of the Sanctuary Alliance higher-ups. It was because Great Emperor Ji Luo was great with space-time skills, and she would be extremely helpful to the 4 members expert troupe, regardless of if it was when they were besieged by the 6 great emperors or then. They had to rely on Great Emperor Ji Luo to set up a space-time tunnel as their route of escape. The 3 of you make it sound so easy. My space-time treasure is a one-time item. If I were to use it this time, it'd be gone. So, don't waste my treasure. You definitely have to destroy the Emperor's Supreme Rock or the Golden Whirlpool, Great Emperor Ji Luo said. Don't worry. We will. Emperor Jiu Qiao said. All right. On Doctrine Propagation Ceremony Day, Ji Luo, you first set up the space-time tunnel. As for the task of destroying the Emperor's Supreme Rock or the Golden Whirlpool, the 3 of us will take care of it, Abysmal Saint Master said. All right. Great Emperor Ji Luo nodded. The 4 of them discussed, and they had a fully planned strategy. Then, they only had to wait for the arrival of Doctrine Propagation Ceremony Day. In the blink of an eye, more than 10 days passed. It was finally the day where Doctrine Propagation Ceremony started. Doctrine Propagation Ceremony in Imperial Peak was only held once over many years. Every time, there would be a few higher-ups from Imperial Cabinet, also those in Peak Chaotic Realm, who came to teach. The experts in Peak Chaotic Realm were pathetically few, even in 3 Emperors' world. Any one of them who taught would be extremely attractive to all cultivators in 3 Emperors' world. Hence, a large number of cultivators in Imperial Peak were excited when Doctrine Propagation Ceremony started. When the door of Doctrine Propagation Palace opened, the cultivators swarmed in. The opportunity lands in Imperial Peak were normally filled up a large number of cultivators comprehending there, such as the 3 lofty statues. But then, there was no one at the 3 statues. The people who were comprehending there had already departed to Doctrine Propagation Palace. Besides the few at the crucial stage or cultivating in seclusion, the other cultivators at Imperial Peak had already gathered in Doctrine Propagation Palace. Even the deacons in Cabinet Imperials went there too. In other words, almost 99% of the cultivators in Imperial Peak were gathered in Doctrine Propagation Palace. Of course, Jian Wushuang wasn't one of them. Jian Wushuang continued to stay where he was as he fixed his gaze upon the pinnacle in Imperial Peak, where the Imperial Cabinet located. Finally, Swoosh, 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 swoosh. There was a total of 5 figures that plunged out from Imperial Cabinet at the same time. The 5 figures didn't hesitate, but plunged towards Doctrine Propagation Palace directly. Jian Wushuang's eyes beamed with excitement when he saw the 5 of them leaving. A total of 5 great emperors who resided in Imperial Cabinet all year round left for Doctrine Propagation Palace. Jian Wushuang muttered. He knew that there wouldn't be many experts of great emperor level, even in 3 emperors' world. It was already great that there were 20 of them. On top of that, more than half of the great emperors were scattered through various regions in 3 emperors' world, but not within Imperial Peak. It was already shocking enough that there was a total of 8 great emperors guarding in Imperial Peak. Then, the 5 great emperors in Imperial Cabinet went to Doctrine Propagation Palace. Hence, in that short period of time, Jian Wushuang would only have to deal with the 3 great emperors who guarded the Golden Whirlpool all year round. Chapter 2031 Take Action. Jian Wushuang didn't move even after he saw the 5 great emperors exit the Imperial Cabinet to go to Doctrine Propagation Palace. After a short while, dom, 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 there were suddenly ancient yet loud bells ringing from the void afar, and they reverberated through the entire Imperial Peak. Jian Wushuang's eyes gleamed when he heard the bell. Doctrine Propagation Ceremony has begun. Jian Wushuang broke into a bloodthirsty smirk. Let's not delay any further. Let's take action, Abysmal Saint Master said in Blood Mountain Sword. Jian Wushuang nodded heavily and finally moved. He didn't leave to the Golden Whirlpool immediately, but he first came to the border of Imperial Peak where the Great Formation was. Jian Wushuang waved, and Great Emperor Ji Luo's figure appeared in front of him out of nowhere. Great Emperor Ji Luo, we shall hand this to you. The great emperors in Imperial Peak had already gathered at Doctrine Propagation Palace, and you already cultivated the concealing skills from Great Emperor Colored Glaze. There shouldn't be anyone who could notice you, Jian Wushuang said. Don't worry about me. The 3 of you have to take the time to destroy Emperor Supreme Rock or the Golden Whirlpool, Great Emperor Ji Luo said solemnly. No problem. Jian Wushuang agreed rather straightforwardly. Then he plunged in the direction of the Golden Whirlpool. Then, in eternal chaotic world far away, in the palace around the void, near the dark millstone, the great emperors in Sanctuary Alliance gathered. They already knew that Jian Wushuang and his expert troop were taking action that day. I hope that Abysmal Saint Master, Sword Emperor, and their troop would succeed. We can't hope. They have to succeed. If they fail, it will be difficult to find another opportunity to take action again. Plus, the Dark Millstone might be unstoppable forever. Yes, they have to succeed this time, regardless of the price they have to pay. The great emperors clenched their fists tightly, and they looked extremely solemn. As for Emperor Bai, he sat there in silence, but they could see that he had hope in his eyes. Eternal chaotic world was already on the verge of life and death. If Jian Wushuang and his troop could destroy the Emperor's Supreme Rock or the Golden Whirlpool to stop the Dark Millstone, Eternal Chaotic World would stand a chance to step back from leaping off the cliff. Go for it, Emperor Bai sighed. In Imperial Peak, in 3 Emperors' World, in the void above the huge Golden Whirlpool, there was a hidden lofty palace. In the palace, there were 3 people gathered together. The 3 people were 2 men and 1 woman, in which a man and a woman were playing chess together, while a red-headed elder watched in silence. No one spoke until the brawny man that Jian Wushuang had taken the form of appeared before the Golden Whirlpool. The red-headed elder raised his eyebrows and said, "Hasn't the Doctrine Propagation Ceremony begun? The guys on Imperial Peak should be there. Why is there still someone here?" The man and the woman who were playing chess heard and simply glanced at him. Then the middle-aged man in black smiled and said, "Who knows? That guy might not be interested in doctrine propagation ceremony." The red-headed elder raised his eyebrows, but didn't think further. He was just a guy in early-stage chaotic realm. They didn't care much about him. Just then, ridiculous, the red-headed elder suddenly roared, and his voice reverberated through the surrounding palace. The red-headed elder's figure quivered, and he left to go to the golden whirlpool under the palace. Although the man and the woman who was playing chess creased their eyebrows, they didn't move. In front of the golden whirlpool, Jian Wushuang had originally been stood there, but he had suddenly turned into flowing light to plunge into the golden whirlpool to reach for the Emperor's supreme rock. His speed was extremely fast, and he had already arrived in the golden whirlpool. Before he got closer to Emperor's supreme rock, the red-headed elder appeared before him. "You have guts. Don't you know the rules in Imperial Peak?" The red-headed elder looked cold as he bellowed. Imperial Peak had a strict rule. One of the rules indicated that no one was allowed to step foot into the golden whirlpool. For whoever violated the rule, the punishment could be a death sentence. Then Jian Wushuang barged into the golden whirlpool. Jian Wushuang heard the red-headed elder's confrontation, and he looked confused. Rules? What rules? Why have I not heard about it before? "You are really a daredevil," the red-headed elder roared, and there was an enormous divine might that pressed on Jian Wushuang. If it had been any other ordinary cultivator in early-stage chaotic realm, he would have been shivering in fear. However, Jian Wushuang looked calm and composed. He didn't look uncomfortable at all. "Hee, I shall skip the bullshit." Jian Wushuang broke into a smile and moved. He charged at the red-headed elder like a bullet. "You are courting death." The red-headed elder was pissed off. How dare a cultivator in early-stage chaotic realm fight against him? However, just as the red-headed elder intended to kill the brawny man, who was arrogant and ruthless, he realized that Jian Wushuang had waved, and when he waved, there were two bursts of fierce aura that soared up. Swoosh, swoosh. The two figures appeared before the red-headed elder. They were Abysmal Saint Master and Emperor Jiu Qiao, who were in Blood Mountain Sword. The moment the two of them appeared, their great emperor aura instantly spread, especially Abysmal Saint Master's aura. The boundless darkness shook the red-headed elder, and he was terrified. The red-headed elder's face grew grave. At the same time, in the hidden lofty palace above the golden whirlpool, the man and the woman who were playing chess immediately lifted their heads. *T. Both of them saw each other's change in expression. They didn't care about their chess anymore, and instantly turned into flowing lights to plunge to the golden whirlpool. In the golden whirlpool, Abysmal Saint Master and Emperor Jiu Qiao had already taken action. Abysmal Saint Master was engulfed in boundless darkness. The boundless darkness even covered the golden luster that was given out by Emperor's supreme rock. He was the ruler of the darkness. As he waved his sleeve, the boundless power of darkness instantly substantiated into a black spear. The black spear carried boundless extermination aura. The moment it took form, it shook the red-headed elder. As for Emperor Jiu Qiao, although his attack was not as terrifying as Abysmal Saint Master's, he was ready to give his all in the battle. It was obvious that he was going to kill the red-headed elder with thunderous measures. Of course, Jian Wushuang took action too. Then, he held back his power no more. He instantly let his boundless divine power spread. He didn't use his punching skill anymore, but he drew Blood Mountain Sword, Sword Principal Xian, Luo, Blast Rainstorm. Chapter 2032, Drastic Change. The red-headed elder performed a shocking power against the sudden attack. He held a saber in each hand. Both sabers brought churning blood clouds. Then, bang, bang. There were two loud bangs. It was a battle of two against one, after all. On top of that, the two were truly great emperors, especially when Abysmal Saint Master's black spear attacked in madness. The red-headed elder could only retreat, and he looked to be in a fix. Before he could steady himself, Jian Wushuang's sword principal attacked like a rainstorm. Sword principal Xian Luo, with 4 moves. Mixed element spirit was a defense skill. Turn monstrous at one thought, prioritized speed. Blast rainstorm focused on power. Moved like strong wind with the momentum of rainstorm, especially with Jian Wushuang's divine power, along with his power of ancient tribe bloodline. The power of the stroke was much stronger than Abysmal Saint Master's spear had been. This boy, the red-headed elder, stared. Previously, he had never cared about Jian Wushuang, who was only in early-stage chaotic realm. Hence, he had only focused on Abysmal Saint Master and Emperor Jiu Qiao's attacks. But then, just as Jian Wushuang's sword appeared before him, the red-headed elder stared with his eyes wide open. Then, he quickly wielded his sabers to block. Dang! There was a loud thud, just as Jian Wushuang's Blood Mountain sword and the red-headed elder's saber collided. There was a burst of terrifying power. It then had a great impact on the red-headed elder's body. Although the red-headed elder was a great emperor, he quivered and spat a mouthful of blood. His face instantly grew pale, and his aura diminished tremendously. Well done, Jian Wushuang. Abysmal Saint Master and Emperor Jiu Qiao looked at Jian Wushuang in surprise. Just then, swoosh, swoosh, the man and the woman rushed to where they were at their fastest speed. Their great emperor aura pressed over simultaneously. Jiu Qiao and I will hold them back. Jian Wushuang, hurry up and go to destroy the Emperor's Supreme Rock, Abysmal Saint Master roared. All right, Jian Wushuang nodded and didn't hesitate at all. He took a step forward, but his figure plunged to the middle of the golden whirlpool where the Emperor's Supreme Rock was. On the other hand, Abysmal Saint Master and Emperor Jiu Qiao blocked the man and the woman in the first instant, including the red-headed elder, who Jian Wushuang had severely injured. He was also held back by Abysmal Saint Master. The 3 great emperors who guarded the golden whirlpool all year round were stopped, while Jian Wushuang had no other hindrance. After a short while, he arrived in the depth of the golden whirlpool, which was the 100-zhang-tall, mountain-like Emperor Supreme Rock. Jian Wushuang stood before Emperor Supreme Rock at a close distance, and he felt the pure energy contained in the Emperor Supreme Rock. The amount of pure energy it carried was far beyond Jian Wushuang's imagination. The vastest pure energy that Jian Wushuang had ever seen was the divine pond of absolute beginning that contained boundless power of absolute beginning. Back then, he had relied on the power of absolute beginning to enhance his divine power tremendously. However, although the pure energy contained in divine pond of absolute beginning was boundless, it was far behind the huge Emperor Supreme Rock. It was such terrifying pure energy. No wonder it could maintain the dark millstone to revolve in the outside world. As long as I destroy it, the dark millstone will stop. Eternal chaotic world will have a chance to live. However, if it continues to exist, eternal chaotic world will vanish into thin air. Jian Wushuang thought to himself. Jian Wushuang had no alternative, so he didn't hesitate. Virum! There was a burst of terrifying sword intention that swept out of Jian Wushuang's body. The sword intention carried a supreme vibe, just like the Emperor's sword. Jian Wushuang's divine power flowed out madly with the power of ancient tribe bloodline power. However, just as he was going to perform sword principle to destroy the Emperor's Supreme Rock entirely, there was a dark axe shadow that descended without any symptoms. The axe shadow brought about boundless extermination aura. The moment it appeared, it caught Jian Wushuang's attention. This is. Jian Wushuang's face changed. He had yet to store up enough energy for Emperor Sword Principle, but he swung the stroke anyway. Dang! There was a loud bang, and the universe shook. There was divine power as vast as an ocean that instantly swept over. Jian Wushuang quivered and took a step back while his eyes looked in front of him. Under the cover of the boundless ocean, somehow there was an extra figure. He was only 5'2", but his body was muscular. His muscles bulged and gave out a raging vibe. He made people think that there was a living beast. The beast was aiming at Jian Wushuang with his battle axe. It's him. Jian Wushuang fixed his gaze. The beast-like bald man was the strongest person among the 6 great emperors that had besieged him in front of silver-winged God Mansion back then. His battle axe skills were terrifying and his strength was fierce. His axe had injured Emperor Zhou Qiao so badly. In terms of power, he was much stronger than Abysmal Saint Master. Then, the beast appeared in the depth of the golden whirlpool and attacked him when he was about to destroy Emperor Supreme Rock. How? Why is he here? Jian Wushuang was surprised. It seems that my appearance has surprised Sword Emperor. The beast-like bald man, Ling Zong, smirked coldly at Jian Wushuang. Even though Jian Wushuang still maintained his appearance of a brawny man, Ling Zong had instantly recognized him. Actually, I have been waiting for you, Sword Emperor. I have been waiting for a very long time. Oh no, not I. I should say, we. As Ling Zong smiled, another 3 figures instantly appeared behind him. The 3 figures gave out an aura that had already reached peak chaotic realm. On top of that, Jian Wushuang had already seen the 3 of them in silver-winged God Mansion before. Among the 3, one of them was the purple-haired man with purple eyes, Chen. Sword Emperor, we have been waiting for you. The purple-haired man with purple eyes, Chen, spoke. Jian Wushuang's looked distressed. He looked at the scene before him. No matter how stupid a person was, they should be able to tell that he had fallen into a trap. The 4 people in front of him were waiting for him in the middle of the golden whirlpool. They were waiting for him to take action, to walk right into the trap. It was a trap. Now, he was in the middle of the trap. Chapter 2033 Trap. As the 4 of them appeared here, then outside the golden whirlpool, Jian Wushuang spread his soul power. As expected, in the void outside of the golden whirlpool, there were 5 figures plunging over. The 5 of them were the 5 great emperors who had departed to Doctrine Propagation Palace. If the 5 of them were in Doctrine Propagation Palace, they would at least need a dozen breaths' time to rush there. But then, it had only been a few breaths' time since Jian Wushuang and his troop had decided to take action. It was obvious that the 5 of them were already on their way back. In the middle of the golden whirlpool, in front of the Emperor Supreme Rock, there was a total of 4 great emperors, including the bald man. Outside the golden whirlpool, there were 3 great emperors who were in charge of guarding the whirlpool. The 5 great emperors who were rushing to golden whirlpool from Doctrine Propagation Palace. All of them added up. It would make 12 great emperors. 12 great emperors, regardless of if it were to Sanctuary Alliance or to 3 Emperors' world. It was a terrifying power. However, it was taking place in front of Jian Wushuang. It seems that you knew long ago that we would take action today. Jian Wushuang stared at the beast-like man, Ling Zong. Of course we did. Actually, not only that, but the Doctrine Propagation Ceremony itself is also merely a scheme that we intentionally plotted against you. We purposely gave you an opportunity to take action. Ling Zong scoffed. I see. It turns out that Eternal Chaotic World is destined to fail this time, Jian Wushuang muttered. Fail? Not that simple, Jian Wushuang. Today, the 4 of you shall die here. Ling Zong's voice became cold, and he took a huge stride forward. Virum! The dark battle axe appeared in the universe. The moment it appeared, it became the main focus of the universe. Jian Wushuang's face grew dim. When Ling Zong took action, Jian Wushuang immediately wielded his Blood Mountain sword too. Boundless divine power instantly poured and swept out. Sword Principal Xian Luo, Blast Rainstorm, a powerful stroke, and it instantly collided with the dark axe shadow. Bang! The noise resounded, and both Jian Wushuang and Ling Zong took one step back simultaneously. Both of their powers were compatible. What? Ling Zong looked at Jian Wushuang in shock. He remembered that Jian Wushuang had performed a terrifying defense power in Silver-Winged God Mansion back then. The 6 great emperors had joined forces to besiege him for a total of 8 breaths' time, and he had remained undamaged. But in terms of true fighting power, Jian Wushuang was about the same as an ordinary great emperor. However, the power that was contained in the sword principle that Jian Wushuang had just performed was compatible with his axe shadow. How long has it been? How could his power increase so tremendously? Ling Zong was first shocked, then he soared with terrifying murderous intention. Let's take action and kill him. The 3 great emperors behind Ling Zong took action simultaneously. Humph! Jian Wushuang humphed coldly and greeted. Jian Wushuang had been fearless against the besiegement of the 6 great emperors back in Silver-Winged God Mansion, let alone the fact that there were only 4 of them then. On top of that, he had cultivated the immemorial celestial body successfully. However, although he was fearless, abysmal Saint Master, and Emperor Zhu Qiao, at the border of the golden whirlpool couldn't take it. They were calm and composed when they were dealing with 3 great emperors. But then, the 5 great emperors had already rushed back from Doctrine Propagation Palace and appeared in the golden whirlpool. In other words, there was a total of 8 great emperors fighting against abysmal Saint Master and Emperor Zhu Qiao. Then, the 2 of them weren't as invincible as Jian Wushuang. They didn't possess the almost immortal body. How could they possibly resist? After a short while, Emperor Zhu Qiao had already been severely injured, while abysmal Saint Master was not doing any better. Virum! There was a terrifying aura that suddenly spread from Emperor Zhu Qiao. There was a uniquely fierce force that surfaced from Emperor Zhu Qiao's body. The force was the power of Star. Emperor Zhu Qiao had already played the secret skill of Star Palace. However, he had only cultivated the first volume of secret skill of Star Palace successfully, and he could only increase his fighting power by 10 times. He still had the lower hand up against the besiegement of so many great emperors. Most importantly, his secret skill of Star Palace could only last for 10 breaths of time. We are in great trouble. What do we do? What do we do? Abysmal Saint Master and Emperor Zhu Qiao were anxious. They had never expected that the chance that seemed hard to come by would be the trap that the other parties set up. They knew that they had gotten into Imperial Peak long ago. How did they know? Abysmal Saint Master didn't understand, but there wasn't time to worry about it. On the other side, Jian Wushuang, who was hemmed in by 4 great emperors, relied on his power and defense power to run out of the middle of the golden whirlpool. He was then next to abysmal Saint Master and Emperor Zhu Qiao. Virum! Jian Wushuang's divine power soared, and his divine body increased in size tremendously. He was almost 100 times bigger in size. On such a humongous divine body, his heads and arms extended one after another. His humongous divine body became a huge space-time black hole and swallowed everything. He continuously performed sword principles along with unique sword intentions. He blocked all the attacks from the 8 great emperors who were attacking abysmal Saint Master and Emperor Jiao. Humph. Do you still want to stop all of us with your force alone, just like the last time? Ling Zong saw, and he humphed coldly. His eyes were shimmering with anger. Fight all out. A total of 12 great emperors were provoked by Jian Wushuang's actions. To fight against 12 of them alone? Who did Jian Wushuang think the great emperors were? The auras of the 12 great emperors increased to their maximum, and all of them were going all out. Abysmal Saint Master, Emperor Jiao, leave now! Jian Wushuang roared. At the same time, he tried his best to resist the attacks of the 12 great emperors. Abysmal Saint Master and Emperor Jiao made a prompt decision. They knew if their enemy was well prepared long ago, it would be impossible for them to destroy the Emperor's supreme rock. The most important task then was for them to survive. Hence, they would have to figure it out after they'd escaped. Swoosh, swoosh. Seizing the time when Jian Wushuang blocked the 12 great emperors, Abysmal Saint Master and Emperor Jiao rushed out of the golden whirlpool at their fastest possible speeds. As for Jian Wushuang, he fought as he retreated. Jian Wushuang wouldn't be a match to 12 great emperors simultaneously. However, without a doubt, even if the 12 great emperors fought all out, it would be impossible for them to kill Jian Wushuang in a short time. Ever since he had cultivated the first volume of Immemorial Celestial Body, his divine body had become stronger than before. It wouldn't be easy for his divine body to be damaged. Chapter 2034 Escape. Jian Wushuang fought as he retreated, and he left the parameter of the golden whirlpool. He moved in the direction of Great Emperor Xi Luo. Just as the golden whirlpool was experiencing a drastic change in Doctrine Propagation Palace, 99% of the cultivators in Imperial Peak were gathered there. They were originally waiting for the leaders of the Peak Chaotic to arrive. But then, what's going on? Why are the leaders leaving? The doctrine propagation ceremony just began, and the leaders have yet to start sharing doctrines, but they left. Did something happen? The cultivators were confused. Even the deacons of the Imperial Cabinet were confused. No one knew what had happened. Suddenly, home. There was a vigorous bang that resounded in Imperial Peak. All the cultivators in Doctrine Propagation Palace naturally heard it at the first instant. Simultaneously, they detected the intense divine power that burst out from afar. What's going on? What happened? The cultivators couldn't stay calm anymore. They departed to the void above Doctrine Propagation Palace, one after another. When they arrived in the void, they could faintly see the huge movement that had taken place in the golden whirlpool at the end of their vision. The cultivators who were at an early stage and middle stage chaotic realm were astonished. Someone is fighting in the golden whirlpool. Who is it? How dare he? No wonder the 5 leaders left instantly. As they gasped and exclaimed in shock, there was someone who plunged out of the golden whirlpool. The first 2 that appeared were naturally Abysmal Saint Master and Emperor Jiao. As the 2 of them plunged out, they flew in the direction of Great Emperor Xi Luo with their all. Not long after the 2 of them left, Jian Wushuang and the other 12 great emperors who were attacking him left the golden whirlpool as well. They were fighting in madness all the while. The cultivators in Doctrine Propagation Palace were shocked when they saw the sight. 12 leaders? 12 leaders joined forces to besiege one person? Oh goodness! Am I seeing this wrongly? And the person seems to be in early stage chaotic realm. How is it possible? He is only in early stage chaotic realm. It would be impossible for him to block one leader. How could he block 12 at the same time? Everyone exclaimed in surprise and disbelief. However, no matter whether they believed it or not, the truth was as such. After they exited the golden whirlpool, Jian Wushuang continued to fight as he retreated. His divine body was extremely huge. He relied on sword Principal Shen Luo along with 9 heads and 18 arms to block all the attacks from the 12 great emperors. The 12 great emperors were fighting with their all. Although the 12 great emperors gave their all and their attacks hit Jian Wushuang's divine body over and over again, Jian Wushuang was unbeatable. His aura was maintained at his peak. He had truly blocked 12 great emperors alone. That person among the crowd in Doctrine Propagation Palace, Lin Tianhao, was staring at the figure who was besieged by 12 great emperors with his eyes wide open. Although Jian Wushuang's divine body increased in size, he had yet to remove his disguise. He maintained his appearance as a brawny man. Lin Tianhao naturally recognized him at first glance. He's Shou. How is it possible? How could it be him? Lin Tianhao looked on in disbelief, and he roared. Shou, it's him? There were people who exclaimed in surprise by the side too. Jian Wushuang had stayed in Imperial Peak for 20 years, and he knew some people. These people recognized Jian Wushuang then. They found it unbelievable because they recognized him. From what they remembered, although Shou was brawny, fierce, and unreasonable, his power was truly of a cultivator in early-stage chaotic realm, just like them. Especially Lin Tianhao. He had even defeated him once when had fought with Shou. No one had ever been in doubt of Shou's power. They thought his power was normal. Maybe Jian Wushuang disguised it too well. Regardless of if it was his power or his character, he had played it flawlessly well. But now, he was fighting against 12 great emperors alone. Even the 12 great emperors couldn't do anything about him. That's just how powerful he was. This guy. Lin Tianhao clenched his fists as he was shocked. Tianhao, he is the person that we ran into at the border of the Great Formation, right? The handsome man next to Lin Tianhao muttered with shock on his face. Before everyone's astonished gazes, Jian Wushuang and his troops moved to the border of Imperial Peak, where the Great Formation was. At the border of the Great Formation, Great Emperor Ji Luo had been concealing her aura and hiding in a corner. There was a slight space-time gap next to her. The gap was very small, but it was made with the price of the ancient treasure. While Jian Wushuang and the other 2 great emperors took action, Great Emperor Ji Luo had been waiting. But then, Great Emperor Ji Luo looked distressed. Failed. It's a trap? How could it be? Great Emperor Ji Luo clenched her teeth, and her body was quivering. Then, there were 2 figures charging at her from the void in front of her. Abysmal Saint Master, Emperor Jiu Qiao. Hurry up! Hurry up! Great Emperor Ji Luo obviously had yet to finish her sentence, but she suddenly stopped. Her eyes dilated in shock at that very moment. Virum! Suddenly, there was a fierce aura soaring up behind her. Then, a figure slowly substantiated. The figure was a tall and sturdy middle-aged man who was faintly discernible. The tall and sturdy middle-aged man appeared behind Great Emperor Ji Luo without any sign. Oh, I see. The last fish is here. She even made a space-time tunnel to connect to the outside world. Quite capable, I see, the tall and sturdy middle-aged man muttered. Then, his palm slammed the back of Great Emperor Ji Luo at lightning speed. Great Emperor Ji Luo felt a tug in her heart. She wanted to dodge, but she realized that the palm was locked onto her. She had no choice but to take the palm forcibly. As she greeted the palm, bang! There was a loud bang, and Great Emperor's body quivered. She tasted a faint sweetness in her throat, and blood flowed out of the corner of her lips. This person is so strong. Great Emperor Ji Luo was shocked. Although she was only considered an ordinary great emperor in eternal chaotic world, she was a great emperor after all, but the other party had injured her so easily with just one palm. Even abysmal Saint Master couldn't do that. There was no doubt that the person in front of her was a super expert who was no weaker than Ling Zong. Chapter 2035. It'd be impossible to escape. Among the great emperors in eternal chaotic world, excluding Supreme Emperor there was a distance between the great emperors, although it wasn't too great. For example, the strongest Red Dragon King and Abysmal Saint Master, they were only stronger than the ordinary great emperors by a slight bit. However, when they fought one-on-one, it would be impossible for the two of them to kill the weakest great emperor. However, the great emperors in Three Emperors world were obviously stronger than the great emperors in eternal chaotic world. They were above the standard of a top great emperor. For example, the beast-like bald man, Ling Zong, was much stronger than Red Dragon King and Abysmal Saint Master. Then, the tall and sturdy man who was charging at Great Emperor Ji Luo was also not any weaker in fighting power than Ling Zong. Outsider, die! The tall and sturdy middle-aged man glanced at Great Emperor Ji Luo. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. Virum! A terrifying aura engulfed Great Emperor Ji Luo. As the tall and sturdy middle-aged man plunged over, Great Emperor Ji Luo felt a sense of crisis. Without hesitation, her figure turned illusionary. She had no intention of fighting the tall and sturdy middle-aged man head-on. Then, she appeared in the void where the space-time gap was. As she slapped, the originally small space-time gap instantly expanded and transformed into a space-time tunnel. The space-time tunnel was enough for one person to fly through. However, Great Emperor Ji Luo had merely expanded the space-time tunnel, and she had yet to leap into it. The tall and sturdy middle-aged man appeared from nowhere again. Then, his palm began magnifying continuously like a huge star that was charging at Great Emperor Ji Luo. Emperor Ji Luo was shocked, and she quickly raised her hand to block. In the end, she fell in the direction of the huge palm. Humph! Do you want to escape via this space-time tunnel? The tall and sturdy middle-aged man smirked coldly. Then he waved, and a billowing space-time power swept out. The space-time tunnel, which was big enough for a person to fly through, began to resume. *T. Great Emperor Ji Luo's face changed. She had been through hardship, and she had even used the one-time-use ancient treasure that she had obtained from the ancient battlefield to make a space-time tunnel. It was also the only route of return for the four members' experts troops. However, the tall and sturdy middle-aged man was obviously not any weaker in the manipulation of space-time power compared to her. Go away! Great Emperor Ji Luo's aura soared, and her divine power increased tremendously. She held a spear in each of her hands. As she wielded them, she brought about terrifying power and stabbed. The spears were aiming at the void in front of her. However, they came before the tall and sturdy man via space-time power. The man had no choice but to retreat. Great Emperor Ji Luo's figure became illusionary. She didn't retreat, and instead advanced to fight the tall and sturdy man head-on instead. At the same time, she let out a shrill scream. Abysmal Saint Master, Emperor Jiu Qiao, hurry up and leave. Leave now. Her roar reverberated in the universe. Great Emperor Ji Luo tried her best to keep the tall and sturdy man occupied. Then, Abysmal Saint Master and Emperor Jiu Qiao happened to rush to the scene. They noticed the space-time tunnel that was returning to its original size. The space-time tunnel had already shrunk in size tremendously, and it only needed a short while until it disappeared entirely. Ji Luo! Abysmal Saint Master clenched his hands. Emperor Jiu Qiao, by his side, also looked pale with rage. They knew clearly that Great Emperor Ji Luo was trying her best to keep the tall and sturdy middle-aged man occupied, while Jian Wushuang was fighting ferociously against the 12 great emperors. He wouldn't be able to rush there before the space-time tunnel disappeared entirely. Then there was only Abysmal Saint Master and Emperor Zhou Qiao, who would manage to escape in time. "Go!" Abysmal Saint Master roared, and he immediately grabbed Emperor Zhou Qiao to throw him into the space-time tunnel. Then Abysmal Saint Master leaped into the space-time tunnel too. Just as the space-time tunnel was going to resume its original size, they got in. In the blink of an eye, Abysmal Saint Master and Emperor Zhou Qiao's figure left, and the space-time tunnel disappeared completely. *M*. Two of them escaped. The tall and sturdy middle-aged man, who was being kept occupied by Great Emperor Ji Luo, grew angry, and his power increased tremendously. Bang! 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 There were 3 continuous bangs. Then Great Emperor Ji Luo humphed and fell backward. The direction in which she retreated was the direction where Jian Wushuang was. Swoosh! Swoosh! Jian Wushuang met with Great Emperor Ji Luo, and both of them stood side by side. The figures surrounding them stopped and towered over them. They looked at Jian Wushuang and Great Emperor Ji Luo with shimmering gazes. The aura that they carried was terrifying. There was a total of 12 great emperors that had besieged Jian Wushuang earlier, including Lingzong. Now, there was the tall and sturdy middle-aged man, who was compatible with Lingzong. Hence, there was a total of 13 great emperors. Among the 13 great emperors, they hemmed Jian Wushuang and Great Emperor Ji Luo right in the middle. Sword Emperor, I'm afraid the two of us can't escape. Great Emperor Ji Luo looked pale as she glanced at Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang nodded faintly. He also knew his situation. There was a great formation surrounding Imperial Peak. Great Emperor Ji Luo had been through a lot of trouble to open up a space-time tunnel. However, the space-time tunnel had already disappeared. She wouldn't be able to open it again. In other words, for the two of them it would be impossible to escape. Luckily, Abysmal Saint Master and Emperor Zhou Qiao have escaped. Our 4-member expert troupe hasn't been wiped out entirely. Great Emperor Ji Luo laughed, but her laughter was extremely pathetic. Jian Wushuang took another deep breath. At such a crucial moment, Abysmal Saint Master and Emperor Zhou Qiao had to run. Because those who had stayed back were destined to die. There was almost no possibility of struggle. The 4 members of experts' troops naturally should try their best to escape. Then they could save some fighting power for Sanctuary Alliance, for Eternal Chaotic World. As Jian Wushuang and Great Emperor Ji Luo talked, the beast-like Lingzong and the tall and sturdy middle-aged man gathered among the 13 great emperors. What happened? How could you let Abysmal Saint Master and Emperor Zhou Qiao escape? Lingzong creased his eyebrows and demanded to know, "How dare you say that about me? I have to deal with 3 in Peak Chaotic Realm. Why don't you give it a try and see if you can make all of them stay?" On the other hand, there are a total of 12 Peak Chaotic Realm who couldn't kill 1 person from early stage Chaotic Realm. When they fought an all-out battle, the tall and sturdy middle-aged man teased. Lingzong paused, but didn't continue to call him to account. Although 2 escaped, Sword Emperor stayed. Among the 4 of them, he was the most important target. As long as we can kill him, we can consider ourselves to have successfully accomplished the task. Lingzong said. The surrounding people nodded heavily. Chapter 2036 Life and Death Battle. The people in 3 Emperors' World knew detailed information about the 4 of them. Among the 4 of them, the one that they wanted to kill the most was, of course, Jian Wushuang. He was too monstrous, too glaring, too intimidating. He was already so powerful when he was only in early stage chaotic realm. Just how strong would he be when he reached peak chaotic realm? Almost no one could imagine. That was why Jian Wushuang had to die. On the other hand, they didn't care much about the other three. Sword Emperor. The beast-like bald man, Lingzong, spoke. As we are already in this stage, you should reveal your original appearance, right? Jian Wushuang was stunned. He then realized that he was still in the form of a brawny man, Shou, who he was disguised as. His facial muscles quivered, and then his figure began to transform too. After a short while, he resumed his original appearance. The cultivators who rushed back from Doctrine Propagation Palace were shocked. I see. This is how he really looks. This person had been in disguise from the very beginning. He hid his power and even his character just to blend in at Imperial Peak. His disguise made him perfect. There were countless people who exclaimed in surprise. They also realized that even though Jian Wushuang had removed his disguise, the aura he carried maintained being in early-stage chaotic realm. In other words, Jian Wushuang's realm was real. He was really in early-stage chaotic realm. This monster, Lin Tianhao gasped in admiration. Previously, he had disdained Jian Wushuang, but now, this person is actually a super expert in disguise. I once invited him to the battlefield to uphold the reputation of the Lim family. The handsome young man next to Lin Tianhao was glad. Luckily, he didn't take up the challenge. Otherwise, I'd be doomed. Everyone in Imperial Peak was watching the battle. At the same time, many of them found it saddening because they knew no matter how monstrous Jian Wushuang was, he had come to a dead end. Great Emperor Ji Luo, it is impossible for us to escape from the current situation. We have no choice but to fight a life and death battle. Jian Wushuang licked his lips, and there was madness in his eyes. There was madness that spread in Great Emperor Ji Luo's beautiful eyes. You go first, Jian Wushuang suddenly said. Huh. Great Emperor Ji Luo looked at Jian Wushuang in shock, but she saw what Jian Wushuang meant by looking into his eyes. I understand. Great Emperor Ji Luo nodded heavily. Then there was a strange power that swept out from the boy at the next moment. The secret skill of Star Place was instantly performed. Come on! Great Emperor Ji Luo bellowed and soared. She charged at the 13 great emperors in front of her. Just as she charged out, Jian Wushuang moved as well. However, he didn't charge forward, but in the opposite direction from Great Emperor Ji Luo. At the end of the direction in which he flew, there was the golden whirlpool, where the Emperor's supreme rock was. Die! Great Emperor Ji Luo was fueled with murderous intention. Her 2 spears stabbed out madly. With the assistance of the secret skill of Star Palace, her power instantly increased by 10-fold, and her speed became extremely fast too. The 2 spears transformed into bolts of lightning that hit the great emperors in front of her. It was obvious that she wanted to hold all the great emperors in front of her back, just like Jian Wushuang, in order to make time for Jian Wushuang. However, the scene simply looked like she was courting death in Lingzong's and other great emperors' eyes. Such a joke. Do you think you are like a sword emperor who possesses defensive skills that make him almost immortal? Lingzong roared and slashed with his battle axe. The tall, sturdy middle-aged man and the other great emperors around him took action simultaneously. The intimidating attacks surged at Great Emperor Ji Luo altogether. Although Great Emperor Ji Luo performed the secret skill of Star Palace and increased her fighting power by 10 times, she still couldn't be a match to so many great emperors. Under the attacks, Great Emperor Ji Luo was at a dead end. But suddenly, Virum! There was a sudden burst of boundless soul power. Great Emperor Ji Luo's aura had already increased tremendously with the aid of secret skill of Star Palace, but it continued to increase at a terrifying speed. Instantly, her aura surpassed everyone else's at the scene. Even Ling Zong and the tall and sturdy middle-aged man next to him were obviously weaker than Great Emperor Ji Luo in terms of aura. This is soul ignition? She is really courting death. The great emperors in Three Emperors' world came back to reality. Although they had said that Great Emperor Ji Luo was courting death, their faces grew grave. When they reached the level of the Great Emperor, it would be easy to suppress or even to injure their opponents. For instance, Ling Zong and the tall and sturdy middle-aged man had strong enough fighting power to injure any ordinary Great Emperor. It was too difficult to kill a Great Emperor. A Great Emperor had already reached the top of the universe. It was extremely difficult for one to reach that level, and they would have an array of skills. A Great Emperor would have a final card, which was Soul Ignition. If a Peak Emperor god were to perform Soul Ignition, his power would increase by a dozenfold. As for Great Emperor, although the increment wouldn't be that ridiculous, his power would absolutely reach a higher level. However, the price to pay for Soul Ignition was death. There was no possibility of survival. Great Emperor Ji Luo knew that she would die for sure. Hence, she performed Soul Ignition. Great Emperor Ji Luo exploded with a terrifying fighting power. Her 2 spears became even more powerful than before. Then, they became 2 death god sickles. The 13 great emperors, only Ling Zong and the middle-aged man could take Great Emperor Ji Luo's spears forcefully. Once the others were hit, they would be severely injured even if they didn't die. Be careful! The woman was fighting like a cornered beast. There was no point in dealing with her just then. Her soul power will burn her to death eventually. We will fight against her then. Shall die then. Keep her occupied. The others go after Sword Emperor. The 13 great emperors came to a decision very soon. More than half of the great emperors stayed back to deal with Great Emperor Ji Luo, including the tall and sturdy middle-aged man. The remaining few great emperors chased after Jian Wushuang under the lead of Ling Zong. Jian Wushuang's gaze was stern, and he stared at the golden whirlpool at the end of his sight. As for everything that had happened behind him, he knew clearly, but he never once turned back to look. He clearly knew what he was supposed to do then. Just as he appeared in the golden whirlpool nearby and leaped into the golden whirlpool, there was a sudden bang from the void behind him. At the same time, Great Emperor Ji Luo's final shrill scream resounded. "Sword Emperor, it's your call." Her voice vanished into thin air, and her aura was severed entirely. Great Emperor Ji Luo had passed away. Chapter 2037, Hopeless Situation. "Sword Emperor, it's your call." Great Emperor Ji Luo's shrill scream resounded in Jian Wushuang's ears, and his body quivered. He never once looked back, but the determination in his eyes grew more intense. Swoosh! Jian Wushuang's speed reached a higher limit, and he barged into the golden whirlpool at the first instant. Ling Zong and the other few great emperors tried their best with him from behind. However, it was impossible to stop Jian Wushuang before he got close to the Emperor Supreme Rock. In the end, Jian Wushuang appeared in front of the Emperor Supreme Rock again. Looking at the Emperor Supreme Rock in front of him, which was 100 zhang tall, Jian Wushuang instantly clenched his hands. He had wanted to destroy the Emperor Supreme Rock previously, but Ling Zong managed to stop him in time. Then, he had no route of return, and he could only fight all out. Break apart! Jian Wushuang sounded hysterical. His divine power burst out in collaboration with his power of ancient tribe bloodline. Then they flowed into Blood Mountain Sword madly. It was as though Blood Mountain Sword could feel Jian Wushuang's madness. It started quivering vigorously and constantly whistled. Jian Wushuang's sword principle exploded entirely. It was still sword principle Shen Luo, and it was the blast rainstorm that focused on power the most, moving like strong wind with the momentum of rainstorm. There was a terrifying sword light that blotted out the sky, and the sun which appeared in the golden whirlpool. It slashed at the huge Emperor Supreme rock directly. *T. Ling Zong and the others who rushed before the Emperor Supreme rock saw the sword light, and their faces grew grave. However, they had just gotten there, and Jian Wushuang had already stroked out his sword light. They couldn't block it in time, and could only watch the terrifying sword light hit the Emperor Supreme rock. Clang! There was an ear-piercing clang, and the entire golden whirlpool quivered. However, it resumed tranquility after that. The 100-zhang-tall, lofty Emperor Supreme rock continued to float in the air quietly. There was no sign of the Emperor Supreme rock's surface as it was hit by Jian Wushuang's sword light, let alone the fact that it wasn't shattered. What? Jian Wushuang looked surprised. He fought with his all and performed a blast rainstorm in sword principle Shen Luo that focused on power the most. In the end, he couldn't even move the Emperor Supreme rock. The Emperor Supreme rock is so sturdy? Ha! Jian Wushuang, do you really think the holy crystal will be easily destroyed? This is such a joke. Forget about yourself. Even if the strongest emperor by an eternal chaotic world came personally, he absolutely couldn't destroy the holy crystal. No one could. Ling Zong laughed hysterically, and the other great emperors looked at him with disdain as well. The Emperor Supreme rock could endure such terrifyingly boundless pure energy. Its sturdiness was naturally unbelievable. It was already difficult to destroy a nail-sized Emperor Supreme rock, let alone the Emperor Supreme rock that was 100 zhang tall. It was almost impossible for an expert in this era to do that. Jian Wushuang's face grew grave when he heard Ling Zong's comment. He performed blast rainstorm with his all, but he hadn't managed to leave any mark on the Emperor Supreme rock. Even if he were to perform his strongest trump card, the secret skill of Star Palace, to increase his power by 100 times, he might not have been able to destroy the Emperor Supreme rock. Most importantly, he was able to slash the Emperor Supreme rock as there was no one who had stopped him earlier. But then Ling Zong and a few other great emperors rushed over, and they wouldn't give Jian Wushuang another chance to hit the Emperor Supreme rock. Humph! Even if I can't destroy the Emperor Supreme rock, I will destroy the surrounding formation. Jian Wushuang's voice was cold, and the sword in tension. He carried sword up. He wielded his sword, and his sword light was aimed at the golden whirlpool surrounding them. The golden whirlpool connected the Emperor Supreme rock with the dark millstone. If he could destroy it completely, it would be enough to stop the dark millstone. Jian Wushuang's sword intention soared, and the others naturally saw through his plan at the first instant. Stop him! Ling Zong roared and transformed into a beast to leap at Jian Wushuang. The other great emperors took action against Jian Wushuang as well. At the same time, the great emperors who had been stopped by great Emperor Ji Luo outside the golden whirlpool earlier rushed over after great Emperor Ji Luo passed away. They met with Ling Zong and the others. In the end, the 13 great emperors gathered together to besiege Jian Wushuang again. Bang! 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 There were continuous bangs in the golden whirlpool. Every bang was followed by a large amount of power and hit the surrounding golden whirlpool. Jian Wushuang was in the middle of the golden whirlpool after all. When they fought there, the impact that they caused would affect the stability of the golden whirlpool. On top of that, Jian Wushuang seized every chance he got to attack the surrounding void with his sword lights. The energy that moved around in the golden whirlpool vibrated within. **T. Ling Zong's face grew grave. By then, the great emperors under the lead of the tall and sturdy middle-aged man rushed to the battlefield and met with Ling Zong. "Let's take action together. Stop him from attacking the great formation in the golden whirlpool," Ling Zong roared. The 13 great emperors took action simultaneously. Even though Jian Wushuang had shockingly powerful defense power that was enough to last the attack of 13 great emperors, he was completely suppressed. He couldn't damage the surrounding great formation or the space-time. There were many experts that had gathered in the void outside the golden whirlpool. They were watching the shocking war in the middle of the golden whirlpool attentively. Everyone could tell that Jian Wushuang was cornered in a hopeless situation. He was merely fighting back like a cornered beast. Humph! Although this person has terrifying defense power, his power isn't invincible after all. He has to space to struggle against the 13 leaders from Imperial Cabinet. It seems that he was only stronger in terms of taking hits. No matter how great his defense power is, he will reach his limit under constant besiegement. At that time, he can only meet a dead end. He's dead. He will let the 13 leaders hem him in for so long. He should be proud, even if he dies. The cultivators sighed. No one thought Jian Wushuang would survive at the current stage. He was mostly fighting back like a cornered beast. However, no one noticed that Jian Wushuang's eyes were extremely cold, even though he behaved rather crazily. At the situation that looked hopeless, Jian Wushuang was even calmer, his thoughts were even more organized, and he was even clearer in judgment. "I'll play a bet." Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes, and there was determination in them. Chapter 2038, Finally Dead. As Jian Wushuang was besieged by the 13 great emperors in madness, he took out a token. The token belonged to Emperor Zhou Qiao, who had escaped from Imperial Peak. "Emperor Zhou Qiao, listen to me. Find a place to hide with Abysmal Saint Master for now. Don't be in a hurry to leave Three Emperors' world." After he sent out a simple message, Jian Wushuang didn't worry about if Emperor Zhou Qiao replied, but his eyes grew red with madness as he looked at the 13 great emperors in front of him. "Haha, come on, come on." Jian Wushuang's hysterical laughter burst out. His hysterical laugh made people feel that he was in a hopeless situation, that he was experiencing madness before death. At the same time, Jian Wushuang's divine body increased in size again. He was about 10,000 zhang tall. With such a huge size, he was simply a giant target to the surrounding 13 great emperors. The great emperor's attacks hit Jian Wushuang even more easily. However, he could cover a bigger range with his body size. The damage that he could cause to the surrounding golden whirlpool was even greater. Jian Wushuang became a madman who was fighting to his death. He fought with his all against the surrounding great emperors. The terrifying attacks shook the entire golden whirlpool, and the originally quivering golden whirlpool shook even more vigorously. Rumble! There was a ferocious rumble, and a storm took place in the golden whirlpool. The terrifying storm stirred an enormous amount of pure energy in Emperor Supreme Rock, and it started roaring. In an instant, Jian Wushuang and all great emperors in the golden whirlpool were engulfed within the energy storm. In the storm, there was a boundless gale howling, and people couldn't keep their eyes open. Oh no! This crazy man. The 13 great emperors looked on in distress. The balance of the surrounding golden whirlpool was broken apart by Jian Wushuang. The energy storm was caused by the imbalance of the golden whirlpool. "The aura he carried has diminished," a great emperor suddenly said. "Huh." The other great emperor looked at Jian Wushuang. As expected, Jian Wushuang's aura was obviously weaker than it had been before. One should know that from the beginning of the massacre until then, Jian Wushuang's fighting power had been at its peak. He wasn't affected at all. However, his aura had diminished then. In other words, he was beginning to get hurt. Haha, I thought he was really invincible and unbeatable. It turns out that he can be hurt too. Humph. He should be proud that he could last so long under the besiegement of 13 great emperors. Regardless, he has his limits. Forget about the Golden Whirlpool. Kill Jian Wushuang first. All right. The 13 great emperors instantly reached a mutual agreement and launched attacks simultaneously. In the energy storm happening in the Golden Whirlpool, they continued to hem Jian Wushuang in. Die! 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 Jian Wushuang constantly roared, and he became even more violent and crazy. However, his aura grew weaker and he started spitting blood. It was obvious that he was coming to an end. Finally, as Ling Zong's battle axe hit on his huge divine body, his divine body began to collapse. Virum! 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 The speed of his collapse was extremely fast. After a short while, Jian Wushuang's divine body turned into divine power that scattered all around the Golden Whirlpool. In the Golden Whirlpool, the energy storm reached a terrifying level along with the madness of the battle. Only great emperors could stand straight in the storm. If it were any ordinary Sir God or Emperor God, they would have been killed in the energy storm. The energy storm was terrifying. Hence, after Jian Wushuang's divine body had collapsed, his flesh and blood that scattered around, including his divine power, was instantly swept by the energy storm. Swoosh, 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 swoosh. The 13 great emperors appeared in the place where Jian Wushuang's divine body had collapsed and looked into the surrounding void. He's finally dead. The expressions on the 13 great emperors looked complicated. It stirred a billowing wave from the bottom of their hearts. A total of 13 great emperors had worked together. There were so many powerful great emperors, including Ling Zong and the tall and sturdy middle-aged man among the group. Even so, they had used such a long time and put in great effort to finally kill Jian Wushuang. Although Jian Wushuang wasn't the strongest enemy that they had ever fought against, there was no doubt that he was absolutely the one with the strongest defense power and had taken the most beating. However, regardless, Jian Wushuang was killed by them. Sword Emperor is quite impressive. Look, he is already dead, but his divine power and aura are still terrifying, one of the great emperors commented. The other great emperors looked at the surrounding void. It was true, the surrounding void, and even the energy storm in the Golden Whirlpool was covered in an enormous amount of divine power and aura. They were still shockingly strong. The great emperors merely complimented casually and thought Jian Wushuang was truly impressive. When one's power reached their level, they would leave behind an enormous amount of divine power and aura. It was perfectly normal. The divine power and aura would slowly be dispersed as time flew past. They didn't need to bother with it. Oh yeah, where is Jian Wushuang's Qian Kuan ring and his treasures? A great emperor immediately searched around the place that Jian Wushuang had died. However, he swept his soul power across but couldn't find any treasure. He couldn't even find the divine weapon that Jian Wushuang had used. What happened? The great emperor looked confused. It should have been swept away by the energy storm in the Golden Whirlpool. His divine body increased to such a size, and it covered too wide a range. The energy storm in the Golden Whirlpool is so strong, it could wipe away his treasure in an instant, another great emperor commented. I noticed earlier that his Qian Kuan ring was swept away by an energy storm. I wanted to stop it, but I was quite far away from the Qian Kuan ring, another great emperor said. Hence, the great emperors were not suspicious about it. It was such a terrifying energy storm. Most importantly, Jian Wushuang's size was so huge. At the very moment at which his divine body collapsed, it became perfectly understandable that his treasure would be blown away by the energy storm. Let's think of a way to stabilize the golden whirlpool first. Then, we can search through the area carefully to see if we can find any of Jian Wushuang's treasure. Ling Zong said. The great emperors on the spot nodded simultaneously. However, Jian Wushuang had caused quite a bit of damage to the golden whirlpool. It would be rather troublesome to recover it. Chapter 2039 failed. The great emperors in Three Emperors' world immediately thought of a way to recover the golden whirlpool. The golden whirlpool viewed the Emperor Supreme Rock as its core. As long as the Emperor Supreme Rock wasn't destroyed, the golden whirlpool could be recovered. On top of that, although Jian Wushuang had tried his best to destroy the golden whirlpool, he hadn't hurt the foundation of the golden whirlpool. As the great emperors in Three Emperors' world worked together, they only took a few days' time to repair the entire golden whirlpool. The huge golden whirlpool resumed its calmness entirely, and only the divine power and aura remained. They continued to fill every corner in the golden whirlpool. After the golden whirlpool was repaired, the great emperors in Three Emperors' world searched through the place thoroughly once again, but it was a pity that they couldn't find any of Jian Wushuang's treasure. They were helpless about it. The golden whirlpool drove the dark millstone, and they were connected via space-time. When the terrifying energy storm took place, it had possibly swept Jian Wushuang's treasure to the dark millstone via the space-time. The great emperors couldn't do anything about it. Imperial Peak slowly calmed down. Of course, everything that happened there was reported to the three overlords in the dark void at the first instant. Lung, Rushue, Demon King, the Savage Man, the Blurry Blood Man gathered together. Jian Wushuang is finally dead, the Blurry Blood Man said. Humph, this ** starred made some trouble for us before he died. Demon King humphed coldly. Regardless, Jian Wushuang had died, and Great Emperor Ji Luo died too, with Abysmal Saint Master and Emperor Jiu Qiao, who were still in Three Emperors' world. They wouldn't be able to do anything much. Next, we shall only concentrate on fighting against the eternal chaotic world, the Blurry Blood Man said. The People's Sanctuary Alliance have found out that the 4 members' experts' troop failed and couldn't be resolved from within. They will definitely gather countless forces of countless experts to fight head-on. They will try to destroy our great formation. However, as long as the Emperor Supreme Rock remains intact, the great formation will be indestructible. They are destined to fail. Demon King smiled maliciously. That's a definite. For this great formation, for this dark millstone, we prepared ourselves over so many years. How could they destroy it just like that? Eternal chaotic world must be exterminated. The Blurry Blood Man clenched his hands, and the fire in his empty eyes was burning. Demon King was equally confident. Only Lung Rushue sat there without making any comment. But if one looked closely, they would notice that her expression was complicated. Jian Wushuang, you died in the end. I thought you'd be able to survive until the end and appear before me. It seems that you are only SOSO. Lung Rushue smirked coldly, and she quickly resumed calm. In the void far away from Imperial City, in Three Emperors' world, there were 2 figures that hid there with their auras reined in. The 2 people were naturally Abysmal Saint Master and Emperor Jiu Qiao, who had escaped from Imperial Peak. There is no response from the communication token of Sword Emperor and Great Emperor Ji Luo. It seems that Abysmal Saint Master looked distressed. Emperor Jiu Qiao became quiet too. After they escaped from Imperial Peak, they immediately kept in touch with Jian Wushuang and Great Emperor Ji Luo. Besides Jian Wushuang, who had sent a message in the beginning, there was no other news after. It meant that they passed away. Emperor God Zhou Qiao sighed. He felt heartache, but he also felt very helpless. He was really helpless. In the situation back then, he and Abysmal Saint Master could only escape. Then, Eternal Chaotic World would at least keep 2 more people with the fighting power of a great emperor. If they were to stay there, there was no doubt that they would die. There was no possibility of survival. Plus, they wouldn't be able to help Jian Wushuang and Great Emperor Ji Luo. One could say that the 2 of them had made the wisest and most accurate decision possible. Jian Wushuang and Great Emperor Ji Luo knew that clearly. Hence, they had no complaints. On the contrary, they were glad that they had managed to escape. At least, not all members in the experts' troop were dead then. Sword Emperor and Ji Luo passed away. There are only you and I left. What should we do next? Do we continue to think about how to destroy the Emperor's Supreme Rock? Emperor Zhou Qiao looked at Abysmal Saint Master. He wasn't confident at all. When the 4 of them were in their prime, they were well prepared and they picked the best time. They had never thought that they would fall perfectly into the enemy's trap. Then, 2 out of 4 of them passed away. They couldn't be entering Imperial Peak, just the 2 of them. Forget about the fact that they were in Great Emperor Realm. Even if they were to enter by sheer luck, it would be impossible for them to destroy the Emperor's Supreme Rock. Don't act hastily. Didn't Jian Wushuang tell the 2 of us to stay put in 3 Emperor's world before he passed away? Let's find a place to hide. Then we will report what happened to Sanctuary Alliance, Abysmal Saint Master said. Emperor Zhou Qiao nodded faintly. In the lofty palace in the void around the dark millstone in Eternal Chaotic World, the higher-ups in Sanctuary Alliance were gathered there. Then, the great emperors looked to be in distress, and they kept quiet. They had heard from Emperor Zhou Qiao's doppelganger that the experts' troop that entered Dark Millstone fell into the enemy's trap, and they were besieged by 13 great emperors. On top of that, Jian Wushuang and Great Emperor Ji Luo had passed away. There were only Abysmal Saint Master and Emperor Zhou Qiao, who had escaped. The Emperor's Supreme Rock is located right in the middle. There are too many experts there. The 4-member expert troop spent so much time and effort, but they failed. It means that it will be impossible for Sanctuary Alliance to destroy the Great Formation from inside of the Dark Millstone. Hence, we can only fight head-on. Emperor Bei's cold voice reverberated and broke the silence in the hall. The great emperors looked at Emperor Bai simultaneously. For the past 20 years, under the guidance of Sanctuary Alliance, Eternal Chaotic World has started preparation. It isn't easy to gather all peak fighting power in a short time. We have to speed up, especially in terms of the special tribes, Emperor Bai said. The great emperors nodded. Zhou Qiao, stay back in 3 Emperors' world with Abysmal. Find a place to hide. Who knows? The 2 of you might come in handy again. Emperor Bai commanded. Yes, Emperor Zhou Qiao nodded. All right, go get ready. Emperor Bai waved. From the beginning until the end, he didn't bring up the passing of Jian Wushuang and Great Emperor Ji Luo, nor did he comment much. Although the surrounding great emperors were confused, they didn't ask, but left. However, Emperor Zhou Qiao's doppelganger stayed back. Chapter 2040. Chapter 2041, The Bee in the Hall, there was only Emperor Bai and Emperor Zhou Qiao's doppelganger. Mr. Emperor Bai. Emperor Zhou Qiao looked at Emperor Bai in confusion. Just as everyone left, Emperor Bai sent him a message in private for him to stay back. It was obvious that Emperor had something in mind, that he wanted to see him in private Zhu Qiao, let me ask you, did you see Sword Emperor and Great Emperor Xi Luo's passing with your own eyes? Emperor Bai fixed his gaze upon Emperor Zhu Qiao. I didn't. Emperor Zhou Qiao shook his head. However, Great Emperor Xi Luo paid a great price to open up the space-time tunnel. It was impossible for her to open it for the second time. They were fighting against 13 great emperors in Imperial Peak. Sword Emperor and Great Emperor Xi Luo stood almost no chance of survival. And there is no reply from their communications tokens. Emperor Zhou Qiao's judgment was in accordance. In such a situation, it would be unrealistic if Jian Wushuang and Great Emperor Xi Luo wanted to stay alive. Emperor Bai creased his eyebrows and said, "You said that Jian Wushuang sent you another message not long after you ran out of Imperial Peak?" "Yes, he told me to stay in Three Emperors' world." "Don't leave in a hurry," Emperor Zhou Qiao said. "Is that so?" Emperor Bai nodded. "All right then. That's it." Yes, Emperor Zhu Qiao didn't understand what Emperor Bai was trying to ask, but he didn't think further. He left very quickly. In the hall, only Emperor Bai was sitting there alone. There was a strange emotion shimmering in his eyes. Just as everyone was certain that Jian Wushuang and Great Emperor Xi Luo died, he was in doubt. After all, he was also an inverse cultivator. He knew clearly how powerful one in the 7th step of inverse cultivation skill was. Although Jian Wushuang was only in stage 1, it wouldn't be easy to kill him. On top of that, Jian Wushuang had many powerful trump cards to hand. Besides, he also had a 7-treasure divine elixir. "Young man, I hope that you are still alive." Emperor Bai muttered, and there was hope in his eyes. In Imperial Peak, in Three Emperors' world, in the middle of the 3 statues, the huge golden whirlpool resumed normal operation. The entire golden whirlpool was huge, but it had recovered from the damage done during the battle. There was almost no scar left behind. If there was any remaining sign, it was still filled with divine power and aura in every corner of the golden whirlpool. The divine power and aura were powerful. From the great emperors in Three Emperors' world's point of view, the divine power and aura would disperse over time. However, just as everyone redirected their attention from the golden whirlpool, the remaining divine power and aura slowly started to gather at the core of the golden whirlpool. The divine power that scattered all around the golden whirlpool started substantiating as well. After a short while, there was a human figure that appeared in the golden whirlpool. He lifted his head, and there was a cold-looking young face. It was Jian Wushuang, who had passed away. He was still alive. Jian Wushuang stood in the depth of the golden whirlpool and reigned in all his aura while he looked around himself. Then there was still a divine power that was moving back to him from the surrounding aura. Just as the divine power gathered, Jian Wushuang's divine body completed the reorganization. However, there seemed to be less than 10% of divine power left. "It seems that I won the bet." Jian Wushuang clenched his hands, and his eyes beamed with joy. After countless life-and-death trials, he had been through countless dangers and hopeless situations. The more hopeless the situation was, the calmer he was, the more accurate his judgment would be. And he had the guts to take the risk, to gamble. Now, it was considered a great bet to him. In the previous battle, he had been besieged by 13 great emperors, and there was a great formation that isolated Imperial Peak. He had no chance of escaping. In such a situation, there was only one way for him to survive. It was for everyone to think he was dead. In short, he had played dead. However, how difficult would it be to fool all 13 great emperors? Ordinary people wouldn't have been able to pull it off. However, Jian Wushuang, who was an inverse cultivator, who possessed a perfect chaotic divine body, could. Hence, he had intentionally let his divine body grow in size and reach about 10,000 zhang tall. He did so because he would look like he was acting out of madness to damage the golden whirlpool. In actual fact, his goal was to spread his divine power wider after his divine body collapsed. It'd be best if his divine power could scatter all around the golden whirlpool under the power of the energy storm. Then he had abundant divine power, but he didn't repair his divine power to repair his divine body when he was attacked by the 13 great emperors. It was so that he could create a scene where his aura grew weaker and collapsed in the end. Then, the 13 great emperors wouldn't be suspicious. Hence, the scene that Jian Wushuang had imagined in his head was realized. His 10,000 zhang tall divine body couldn't take the mad attacks of the 13 great emperors, and it finally collapsed. The enormous amount of his divine power scattered all around. When the energy storm swept out, his divine power was scattered to every corner of the golden whirlpool. Hence, it had led to the remainder of Jian Wushuang divine power and aura all over the golden whirlpool. If it was anywhere else, such as a spacious void, the 13 great emperors absolutely would take Jian Wushuang's remaining divine power, and he would vanish. However, they were in the golden whirlpool. The golden whirlpool was too important to three emperors' world, and the coverage of his divine power was too wide. Hence, the 13 great emperors couldn't take it entirely. Hence, they could only let his divine power lie around in the golden whirlpool and wait for it to disperse on its own. The 13 great emperors left after they had repaired the golden whirlpool. From the beginning until the end, the great emperors had never suspected that Jian Wushuang was still alive. It was impossible that they would suspect it because Jian Wushuang's divine body had collapsed in front of them. The 13 of them had seen it clearly. Under such circumstances, any ordinary cultivator would be utterly dead. However, they weren't informed about how terrifying an inverse cultivator was. Nor did they know the true power that a seventh step in inverse cultivation possessed. Hence, Jian Wushuang had survived. He had won the bet. He relied on his perfect chaotic divine body and his disguise to fool the 13 great emperors. Then, after everything had stabilized and the 13 great emperors were no longer concerned about the golden whirlpool, Jian Wushuang reorganized his divine power and recovered his divine body. The great emperors in three emperors' world had no idea about it. Chapter 2040, 1-1, who survives a great disaster is destined to good fortune forever after. Luckily, I won the bet. Otherwise, the only choice I would have had back then would have been to stop at nothing and play all my trump cards to fight a life and death battle. Jian Wushuang clenched his hands. With such actions, he might have caused some casualties among the great emperors from three emperors' world. However, there was no doubt that he would have died. Now, at least had survived. In the golden whirlpool, Jian Wushuang waved. Virum! There was a ray of dark light that burst out. It was Jian Wushuang's Chen King ring that contained his treasures, including Blood Mountain Sword, River Mountain Map, and so on. The Qian Kuan ring had always been under the coverage of his divine power. Most importantly, due to the fact that he was still alive, Qian Kuan ring had an owner, and it wouldn't spread any aura. In addition to that, it was covered with his divine power. Hence, the 13 great emperor couldn't find it. Jian Wushuang put on his Qian Kuan ring and his 5 gem armor. At the same time, he took out 2 communication tokens. The 2 tokens belonged to Abysmal Saint Master and Emperor Jiuqiao. As long as they were still within three emperors' world, they would be able to keep in touch with Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang simply glanced through it, and he knew that the 2 great emperors had sent him many messages after they'd left Imperial Peak. Jian Wushuang creased his eyebrows. He didn't reply, and put the 2 tokens away. He didn't want anyone to know that he was alive. including the people in Sanctuary Alliance. Then, Jian Wushuang's body turned illusionary and appeared in the middle of the golden whirlpool above the huge Emperor Supreme rock. There was a faint golden light there. The golden light was much brighter than the other places in the golden whirlpool. The golden light was actually a unique prohibition. If I'm not mistaken, the prohibition is a vital element that connects the golden whirlpool with the Emperor Supreme rock. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes while he walked before the golden prohibition. As his divine power scattered around the huge golden whirlpool, he also studied the revolving golden whirlpool. By then, he had already realized the existence of the golden prohibition. He could tell that the golden prohibition was extremely mysterious. Besides, the boundless pure energy in the Emperor Supreme rock actually surged through the golden prohibition. In other words, without the golden prohibition, it would be impossible for the golden whirlpool to obtain energy from the Emperor Supreme rock. Nor would it be possible for the dark millstone to operate. Previously, we didn't understand the structure of the golden whirlpool at all. We only knew to damage the golden whirlpool blindly. In the end, although the golden whirlpool was damaged, the experts in Three Emperors' world repaired it with ease. If I could find out about the golden prohibition sooner and figure out a way to destroy the golden prohibition, I'm afraid it wouldn't be that easy if the great emperors in Three Emperors' world wanted to repair it. Jian Wushuang smiled and said, "Don't act hastily. Let's take a look." Jian Wushuang muttered and slowly reached his hand into the golden prohibition. Suddenly, rumble! A vast ocean of pure energy flowed to Jian Wushuang directly. Jian Wushuang was shocked at first. Then, he was filled with excitement. He could feel that the golden prohibition contained an unbelievable amount of pure energy. The pure energy wasn't utilized by the surrounding whirlpool, but could be refined and absorbed straight away. Could it be? Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes while he had an idea that popped into his head. The moment the idea rose, it couldn't be suppressed. Jian Wushuang slowly walked forward and then submerged himself within the golden prohibition. He was covered under the golden prohibition entirely. After Jian Wushuang entered the golden prohibition, he felt that he was submerged into an ocean of pure energy. There was too much pure energy, and it was immense. His divine body couldn't help but shiver. He was shivering in excitement. Jian Wushuang could feel the blood in his body boiling, and his cells were cheering with joy. He didn't intentionally guide it, but the surrounding pure energy poured into his divine body continuously. His divine body instantly refined and absorbed it. The speed of refinery and absorption was shockingly fast. Jian Wushuang closed his eyes and started absorbing pure energy to his heart's content. Thanks to the speed of absorption, he who had originally only had less than 10% divine power started recovering at a shocking speed. 10%, 20%, 30%. In merely half a day's time, his divine power recovered by more than 30%. Such a recovery speed is much faster than King of Venomous Worms. Jian Wushuang was extremely excited. King of Venomous Worms had been parasitizing his body and fighting along with him. He would recover Jian Wushuang's divine power as well as a wound. However, when Jian Wushuang reached the 7th step of the perfect chaotic divine body, King of Venomous Worms' recovery speed wasn't significantly helpful to Jian Wushuang. The trip to the dark millstone was dangerous, and Jian Wushuang wasn't sure what he would go through. Hence, he didn't want King of Venomous Worms to take the risk. He had left King of Venomous Worms in Green Fire World and had left a drop of inheritance blood essence. He was prepared for the worst. If he were to pass away, King of Venomous Worms could rely on the drop of inheritance blood essence to look for the next ancient god. Fortunately, had done so. Otherwise, when his divine body collapsed and turned into the scattered divine power all over the golden whirlpool, the existence of King of Venomous Worms would be hard to conceal. He most likely would die at the hands of the great emperors from Three Emperors' World. Now, although Jian Wushuang didn't have King of Venomous Worms to recover his divine power for him, the constant flow of pure energy within the Golden Prohibition was stronger by a few folds. In 2 days' time, his divine power completely recovered. Jian Wushuang never once left the Golden Prohibition, but constantly absorbed the pure energy. His refinery and absorption speed became faster and faster. Like the saying, one who survives a great disaster is destined to good fortune forever after. It is true. Jian Wushuang laughed. He knew clearly that the Golden Prohibition was absolutely a great opportunity for him. A great opportunity. One should know that the first stage to the third stage in the sixth step of inverse cultivation required an accumulation of enormous divine power. Jian Wushuang put in extravagant time and effort to accumulate his divine power to his extreme limit through Divine Pond of Absolute Beginning, and also via absorbing Star Demon Core. At the seventh step of inverse cultivation, Chaotic Supreme possessed a perfect chaotic divine body that was made of pure divine power. Hence, the divine power required to level up from stage 1 to stage 3 was an enormous amount of accumulated divine power. Now, Jian Wushuang was in the Golden Prohibition, and the Golden Prohibition obtained boundless pure energy from the Emperor Supreme Rock. He could continue to enhance his divine power endlessly through absorbing pure energy until he reached the second stage. Chapter 2042, the second stage of Chaotic Supreme. Jian Wushuang constantly elevated his divine power as he stayed in the Golden Prohibition. The Golden Prohibition was unique to begin with. There was no one who noticed Jian Wushuang in the Golden Prohibition. There were 3 great emperors who continued to stand guard outside the huge golden whirlpool all year round. Occasionally, the 3 great emperors would release their soul power to scan through the golden whirlpool. However, their souls couldn't detect the scenery within the Golden Prohibition. Naturally, they didn't find out about Jian Wushuang. It was even more impossible to see him with naked eyes. Hence, the entire Golden Whirlpool became peaceful. Jian Wushuang stayed in the Golden Prohibition to refine and absorb divine power aggressively in order to level up his power, but no one knew. As for the Dark Millstone, it wasn't affected at all. It continued to move in eternal chaotic world, and it continued to crush everything. Its size was growing bigger and bigger over time. The experts in eternal chaotic world were preparing at the fastest speed possible. In such a situation, time flew past. In the blink of an eye, 30 years passed. In the Golden Prohibition, above the Emperor Supreme Rock, Jian Wushuang, who had been keeping his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes. In the instant when he opened his eyes, his aura underwent a drastic change. Previously, he had merely been on the Sir God level. Now, he had reached Emperor God realm. I have reached the second stage of Chaotic Supreme. Jian Wushuang clenched his hands, and he was filled with excitement. One should know that it had not been long since he had stepped foot onto the 7th step of inverse cultivation. According to ordinary cultivation, he would at least need tens of thousands of years or even longer before he could get to the second stage. However, he only spent 30 years in the Golden Prohibition before he broke through. This was the opportunity. It could also be described as Jian Wushuang's luck. When Jian Wushuang had reached the second stage of the Chaotic Supreme, his overall power had naturally increased tremendously. First of all, his divine body had been enhanced. Then, it was followed by his divine power. From the first stage to the second stage, it was a transformation in quality in terms of his divine power. Judging from the strength of his divine power, it was stronger by a few times. Most importantly, the intensity of his divine power had grown. The divine power in the second stage was much more abundant than in the first stage. Such abundant divine power represented that his defense ability had increased again. If he was the first stage, he could reorganize his divine body 4 times. Then, as his divine body enhanced again, it would be much more difficult to reorganize his power. But his divine power could support him in reorganizing his divine body by 7 or even 8 times. It was even more ridiculous. It was even more terrifying. However, my ancient tribe bloodline didn't improve along with this breakthrough. Jian Wushuang muttered. In between his eyebrows, there were only 8 ancient tribe stars. Jian Wushuang could do nothing about it. Regardless, his power continued to increase tremendously. Before this, I was only in the first stage, relying on the pure divine power that I enhanced via the first volume of immemorial celestial body I cultivated. In addition to my ancient tribe bloodline power, my power had already far beyond any ordinary great emperor. When I fight head-on, even when I was up against the beast-like bald man from 3 Emperor World, Lingzong, he was only just my match. Now that my divine power has increased again, in terms of power and strength, there shouldn't be any great emperor from 3 Emperors World who can compare to me favorably. Even if I met the bald man, he couldn't suppress me in terms of strength. Jian Wushuang beamed with joy. From the first stage to the second stage, his fighting power had transformed in terms of quality. He was absolutely the top among all great emperors. Besides Emperor Bai, there was no one in Sanctuary Alliance who could be his match. Not only was he strong, but his defensive ability was terrifyingly strong. He was almost invincible. If he had to state a flaw of his, it would only be that his comprehension of doctrine was slightly lower. Jian Wushuang was content to have reached such a level in a short time. Jian Wushuang let out a breath of relief and took out a token. The token was naturally Emperor Zhou Qiao's. Emperor Zhou Qiao. Jian Wushuang finally sent a message to Emperor Zhou Qiao. On a remote mountain in Imperial City far away, there was a cave dwelling that had recently been opened. Abysmal Saint Master and Emperor Zhou Qiao had been hiding in the cave dwelling for the past 30 years. When Jian Wushuang sent a message, Emperor Zhou Qiao immediately received it. Sword Emperor. It's a message from Sword Emperor. Emperor Zhou Qiao, who was reclining leisurely, instantly stood up. His eyes were beaming with joy. What? Abysmal Saint Master was instantly shaken too. He looked at Emperor Zhou Qiao and asked, Zhou Qiao, what did you say just now? It's Sword Emperor. Emperor Zhou Qiao was excited. He sent a message. How is this possible? Abysmal Saint Master looked at him in disbelief. Didn't Jian Wushuang die 30 years ago? In such a situation, he should have been dead. There was absolutely no chance of survival. Why has he suddenly sent a message after 30 years? Hurry up and ask him, Abysmal Saint Master said. Emperor Zhou Qiao immediately took out a token and asked closely, Sword Emperor, is it really you? You didn't die? Of course, I am living well. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. How could it be? How did you escape from such a situation? Emperor Zhou Qiao asked in disbelief. I didn't escape. I am still in Imperial Peak, and I am in the Golden Whirlpool. I used a unique way to fool the great emperors from 3 Emperor Worlds into thinking that I am dead. As a detailed reason, I could only explain that it is related to a unique ability I have as an inverse cultivator. Jian Wushuang answered. I see. Emperor Zhou Qiao nodded. He knew that inverse cultivators were scary, and they had an extra unique ability in every step. However, he didn't know what ability the 7th step in inverse cultivation had. Regardless, the unique ability that the 7th step in inverse cultivation had seemed to have rescued Jian Wushuang. That's awesome. It's great that you survived, Emperor Jiu Qiao and Abysmal Saint Master were filled with excitement. Then Emperor Jiu Qiao asked, "How about Ji Luo? How is she?" "Great Emperor Ji Luo passed away. I saw her die with my own eyes. She performed the secret skill of Star Palace and Soul Ignition to fight for more time for me," Jian Wushuang said in a low voice. Although Great Emperor Ji Luo wasn't a close friend per se, the four of them were comrades in arms that had been through life and death situations. The final decision that Great Emperor Ji Luo had made at the last moment of her life had earned Jian Wushuang's respect. There was no doubt that Great Emperor Ji Luo was a hero that had died for eternal chaotic world. Chapter 2043, Double Agent. Abysmal Saint Master and Emperor Jiu Qiao became quiet when they heard Jian Wushuang's reply, but they weren't surprised. Jian Wushuang had survived because of his unique ability as an inverse cultivator. On the other hand, Great Emperor Ji Luo didn't have the ability. Regardless, it is great news that you survived. I have to report to Sanctuary Alliance about this, Emperor Jiu Qiao said. "Don't be in a hurry." Jian Wushuang cut him off. "Why?" Emperor Jiu Qiao was confused. "Don't spread the news about me being alive. Only you and Abysmal Saint Master know about this," Jian Wushuang said. "Sword Emperor, you mean?" Emperor Jiu Qiao was initially stunned, but he quickly responded. Abysmal Saint Master squinted his eyes and said, "Jian Wushuang, you mean that there is a double agent from Holocaust Sect or Acheron Palace in Sanctuary Alliance?" "Yes," Jian Wushuang nodded. "Didn't you suspect this?" Abysmal Saint Master and Emperor Jiu Qiao looked distressed. As great emperors, they had to be intelligent. Before Jian Wushuang had pointed it out, they had had the suspicion. One should know that they were well prepared 30 years ago. They had found the correct time to take action, and Jian Wushuang's disguise had been perfect all the time. In a normal situation, it would have been impossible for the great emperors in Three Emperor World to know that Jian Wushuang had been into Imperial Peak, let alone the fact that they'd set up a trap for Jian Wushuang to be in. In actual fact, not only had the great emperors from Three Emperors World known that they were in Imperial Peak long ago, but they had also been certain that they would take action during the doctrine propagation ceremony. Not long after they'd arrived in Three Emperors World, there had been 6 great emperors that found and besieged them. They were almost certain that they had been tracked by the experts in Three Emperors World all the time. How were they tracked? Naturally, there was people who had shared their information. Our mission isn't publicized in Sanctuary Alliance. Only the higher-ups in Sanctuary Alliance know. In other words, could there be a double agent among the great emperors in Sanctuary Alliance? Abysmal Saint Master creased his eyebrows. Any great emperor expert would be one of the higher-ups in Sanctuary Alliance. If there was a double agent among the great emperors, the person was well hidden. He was very skilled. We still can't determine if there was a double agent among the higher-ups in Sanctuary Alliance. But to be safe, we will not share our action plan. Emperor Jiu Qiao, if you doorport in, you can only tell Emperor Bai that I am alive, Jian Wushuang exhorted. I understand. Emperor Jiu Qiao nodded. Among the great emperors in Sanctuary Alliance, Emperor Bai definitely couldn't be a double agent. There was no doubt about it, because if Emperor Bai was a double agent, Eternal Chaotic World didn't stand a chance to survive. As for the others, anyone was possible, including Abysmal Saint Master and Emperor Jiu Qiao. Abysmal Saint Master and Emperor Jiu Qiao gave their all after they entered Three Emperors World, and Jian Wushuang had witnessed their effort with his own eyes. Although the possibility of one of them being a double agent was extremely low, Jian Wushuang wouldn't send them any message immediately after he reorganized his divine body just to be safe. After all, if either Emperor Jiu Qiao or Abysmal Saint Master was a double agent, They would immediately inform the great emperors in Three Emperors world. By then, Jian Wushuang would definitely be doomed. After his power increased tremendously and he was confident enough to deal with all possible outcomes, he would then send a message to Emperor Zhou Qiao. In the lofty palace in the void, near the dark millstone in eternal chaotic world. As expected, he didn't die. Emperor Bai sat there when he received a message from Emperor Zhou Qiao's doppelganger. His eyes beamed with joy, but he wasn't too surprised. He had already been wondering if Jian Wushuang had really died 30 years ago. Now, it seemed that he really hadn't. Mr. Emperor Bai, Sword Emperor, requested me to share a message with you. He wants you to not share the news that he is alive with the others. Besides, he is preparing to take action against the Emperor Supreme Rock again, and he has already drawn up a plan. However, he would need Emperor Bai to give full cooperation. Emperor Zhou Qiao's doppelganger sent a message and shared Jian Wushuang's plan briefly. Emperor Bai heard and nodded. The plan is great. Not only could he escape, but he could also certify whether there is any double agent among the higher-ups in Sanctuary Alliance. However, there is a prerequisite for the plan, which is for him to walk out of Imperial Peak alive. Zhou Qiao, you tell him that I will fully collaborate with him, but he has to be extremely careful. Yes, Emperor Zhou Qiao nodded. In the huge golden whirlpool in Imperial Peak, Jian Wushuang received Emperor Bai's reply through Emperor Zhou Qiao. Then, he prepared to take action. He let out a breath. Then his gaze fixed upon the golden prohibition in front of him. The golden prohibition was a great opportunity for him. In only 30 years' time, he had broken through and reached the second stage via the golden prohibition. If he continued to stay in the golden prohibition, his divine body could continue to improve, and he could reach the peak of the second stage. He might even reach the third stage, which was the ultimate stage in the seventh step of inverse cultivation. However, the time required for him to reach the third stage would be too long. He had spent 30 years to get from the first stage to the second stage. However, it would take at least 300 years to get from the second stage to the third stage, or even longer than that. Although a few hundred years, or even a few thousand years, didn't mean much to him. He could afford to wait, but eternal chaotic world couldn't. One should know that the dark millstone swept over and crushed everything over the years. Holy kingdoms vanished one after another. If the dark millstone continued to revolve for another 300 years, it would definitely reach a terrifying level. By then, when Jian Wushuang would destroy the Emperor Supreme Rock, and eternal chaotic world would be about to be destroyed then as well. Hence, he couldn't wait any longer. He had to take action immediately to stop the dark millstone. The golden prohibition was the pivotal role to obtain the pure energy from the Emperor Supreme Rock. Destroy it first, Jian Wushuang muttered, and Blood Mountain Sword appeared in his hand. There was a bolt of sword intention that soared up from Jian Wushuang's body. At the same time, his divine power, which was a few times stronger than 30 years ago, soared too. Jian Wushuang strengthened his grip and swung with his Blood Mountain Sword, a move like strong wind, with the momentum of rainstorm. It was the move that focused on power the most from Sword Principal Xian Luo, Blast Rainstorm. Hung, a terrifying sword light suddenly appeared in the middle of the golden whirlpool. Then, it instantly slashed at the golden whirlpool brutally. The power of the golden prohibition was extraordinary. The golden prohibition could resist any ordinary great emperor attack. But then, just as Jian Wushuang struck, crash, the golden prohibition was broken into two from the middle. Chapter 2044, Demolish. The golden prohibition shattered. The originally organized golden whirlpool lost its balance and stirred up a great commotion. Rumble! the entire huge golden whirlpool quivered vigorously. The ocean of pure energy instantly turned into a terrifying energy storm and swept out. There was a sudden explosion of energy storm. It absolutely could tear an emperor god into pieces at the first instance. Even an expert of great emperor level, who had a weaker divine body, would be severely injured by the sudden howl of energy storm. However, Jian Wushuang could stand strong in the middle of the energy storm. During the war 30 years ago, I attacked the golden whirlpool for so long, and the energy storm that I stirred up wasn't this strong. As expected, the golden prohibition is the pivotal element of the surrounding great formation. Jian Wushuang smiled. The golden prohibition shattered, and the entire golden whirlpool collapsed. However, Jian Wushuang's gaze was fixed upon the mountain-sized Emperor Supreme Rock in front of him. The Emperor Supreme Rock was at the root of everything. The golden prohibition, the golden whirlpool. Even the dark millstone was powered by the Emperor Supreme Rock as the source of their energy. Then, even though Jian Wushuang had destroyed the golden prohibition and the golden whirlpool, the experts in Three Emperors' world could still have a way to recover them as long as the Emperor Supreme Rock was still there. Without the guidance of the golden prohibition, I wonder if I could refine the Emperor Supreme Rock directly. There was an idea that popped up in Jian Wushuang's head, and he immediately gave it a try. Just as he was trying his best to refine the Emperor Supreme Rock, there was a great commotion in Imperial Peak. The three great emperors in the palace above the golden whirlpool stood guard at the golden whirlpool all year round. They were naturally the first to notice the drastic change in the golden whirlpool. However, when the three great emperors came back to reality, the golden whirlpool had already begun to collapse. Shit! What happened? How could this happen? The three great emperors were shocked. They had been in the void above the golden whirlpool, and they had been watching the golden whirlpool. A few moments ago, the golden whirlpool had still been at peace. Then, the golden whirlpool had collapsed. Look, the redhead elder shouted as he pointed at the middle of the golden whirlpool, where the huge Emperor Supreme Rock was. They could faintly see a human figure there. D***MN. The three of their faces grew grave, and they immediately charged to the collapsing golden whirlpool. Besides, there were figures soaring in Imperial Cabinet located at the highest point in Imperial Peak. The figures included the beast-like bald man, Lingzong, who Jian Wushuang was familiar with, the tall and sturdy middle-aged man that was not any weaker than Lingzong, and also the other 8 great emperors. They noticed the drastic change in the golden whirlpool. How could it be? Let's go. Let's rush over. The great emperors looked distressed, and they rushed to the golden whirlpool at their fastest possible speed. As for the cultivators in early stage and middle stage chaotic realm in Imperial Peak, they were astonished too. In the collapsing golden whirlpool, it was replaced with the terrifying energy storm. In the middle of the storm, Jian Wushuang was trying to refine the Emperor Supreme Rock. However, he gave up after a short while. This is too huge. The Emperor Supreme Rock is too huge. The pure energy it contains is ridiculously strong. With my power, I could refine it, but it would require a very long time. I would need at least 10,000 years. On top of that, the Emperor Supreme Rock is quite unique. I can't take it away if I didn't refine it. Jian Wushuang let out a sigh, but he looked like had already made a decision. If I can't refine and absorb it, I will have to forcefully destroy it. Jian Wushuang raised his sword up high in the sky. There was a supreme sword intention of an emperor's sword that gradually swept out. Among all sword principles that Jian Wushuang mastered, the strongest in terms of power was still King Sword Principle. However, King Sword Principle required time for power accumulation. As his opponent, hardly give him any time during close body combat. Sword Principal Xian Luo would be a better one to perform. But now, no one could stop him. Hence, Jian Wushuang naturally performed King Sword Principle. Besides, Jian Wushuang knew how sturdy the Emperor Supreme Rock was long ago. Jian Wushuang had once performed Blast Rainstorm on Emperor Supreme Rock, but he hadn't left any mark on it. Although his power had improved tremendously, it would still be unrealistic if he wanted to completely destroy Emperor Supreme Rock with King Sword Principle. Hence, when he performed the Sword Principle, there was a bolt of mysterious yet fierce power that filled the air. The power as the power of star. Jian Wushuang was performing his greatest trump card, the secret skill of Star Palace. It wasn't easy to perform the secret skill. Jian Wushuang would definitely not perform it unless it was at a crucial time. At this point, he couldn't think so much because he had to destroy the Emperor Supreme Rock completely. There was a terrifying sword shadow that substantiated in the void from nowhere. The sword shadow was like the Emperor's sword. It was as though billions of heads would fall on the ground with one stroke. The power was enough to shake an ordinary great emperor. However, the terrifying sword shadow's power had increased by 1,000 times under the effect of the third volume in the secret skill of Star Palace. It was already enough to shake an ordinary great emperor to begin with. Now, its power increased had by 1,000-fold. What had happened? Just how powerful was the stroke? There was no doubt that the power of the stroke exceeded a great emperor's capability. Even Emperor Bai, who was widely known as the strongest one in Eternal Chaotic World, would find it hard to achieve such a level when he performed his strongest hit. The great emperors from Three Emperors' World, who were rushing to the middle of the golden whirlpool, were dumbfounded when they looked up at the sword shadow. Even the strongest Ling Zong and the tall and sturdy middle-aged man stood dumbfounded at the sight, because they realized that the stroke wasn't something that the great emperors could achieve. The stroke hit the 100-jong-tall, mountain-like Emperor Supreme Rock without any hindrance, the so-called Holy Crystal. The sword light hit the Holy Crystal, and a terrifying power exploded. Rumble! Even a great emperor's full hit couldn't shake the mountain-like Emperor Supreme Rock, but it was quivering vigorously under the sword light. There was a vigorous quivered, then crack, crack. There were soft, cracking noises, and all the cultivators in Three Emperors' World stared with eyes wide opened. The cracks on the Emperor Supreme Rock became visible, and the cracks became wider. In the end, the Emperor Supreme Rock shattered. Emperor Supreme Rock shattered. Chapter 2045 Anger. Shatter. When the top experts from Three Emperors' World, who were rushing over, saw the scene where the Emperor Supreme Rock had shattered, their eyes were wide open. Some of the great emperors even stood there dumbfounded. Emperor Supreme Rock. That was the holy crystal that the Three Emperors' World worshipped. Over the years, it had been towering within the golden whirlpool. It could be said that everything in Three Emperors' World relied on the Emperor Supreme Rock. But then, the Emperor Supreme Rock had shattered? No. The beast-like bald man, Ling Zong, let out a hysterical roar. His eyes were filled with boundless murderous intention, and he looked at the figure located in the depths of the golden whirlpool. Coincidentally, the figure turned around to look at Ling Zong and the others who were there. Their gazes met. Jian Wushuang smiled and said, "Everyone in Three Emperors' World, long time no see. How have you been?" When the great emperors from Three Emperors' World saw Jian Wushuang, they were instantly stunned. Jian Wushuang? It's him? How could it be possible? Impossible. He died. We killed him. He died right in front of us. How could he be alive? There was one hysterical bellow after another. The great emperors couldn't believe what they were seeing. They had seen Jian Wushuang's divine body collapse with their own eyes, and he was dead. But then Jian Wushuang didn't die. Not only did he not die, but he has been hiding in the Golden Whirlpool. Now, he has even destroyed the Golden Whirlpool and the Holy Crystal, the asterisk M in it. After astonishment, everyone was raging with anger. Anger. The way the great emperors from Three Emperors' world looked at Jian Wushuang showed their murderous intention. They wanted to tear Jian Wushuang apart. D asterisk M in it. Die. After a loud scream, the three great emperors who were guarding the Golden Whirlpool plunged towards Jian Wushuang under the lead of the red-headed elder. They were the closest to Jian Wushuang. Naturally, they were the first to take action. As for Ling Zong and the others, they had yet to reach the scene. Looking at the three great emperors charging at him, Jian Wushuang lifted the corners of his lips and formed a cold smirk. Blood Mountain Sword in his hand drew a unique arc in the void in front of him. The shrill, cold sword light appeared in front of the three great emperors almost instantly. The stroke that Jian Wushuang performed was the move that focused on speed the most in Xian Luo sword principle, turn monstrous at one thought. As it was a move that focused on speed the most, it was traveling forward with a terrifying power then. Clang, clang, clang. There were three clangs, and the three great emperors who were charging at Jian Wushuang suddenly stopped. Then they even took a few steps back. Yes, with one stroke, the three great emperors were beaten off. How is this possible? The three of them looked up in astonishment. Jian Wushuang continued to smile. Then his figure went illusionary, and he wielded his sword again. Then Jian Wushuang performed the most powerful move in Xian Luo sword principle, Blast Rainstorm. Hung. It was a move like strong wind with the momentum of rainstorm. As Jian Wushuang performed it with divine power, the power became even more ridiculously powerful. Let's fight against him at the same time. The red-headed elder immediately roared with a flash of terror in his eyes. The three great emperors were experienced. They naturally could tell how powerful Jian Wushuang's stroke was. Hence, they immediately took action together to block. The three of them joined forces to resist Jian Wushuang's stroke. But in the end, humph. The three of them let out a muffled humph at the same time, and they flew backward from the impact. Besides the red-headed elder, the other two had blood flowing out of the corners of their lips. He is so powerful. The red-headed elder was astonished. However, when Jian Wushuang performed the sword principle to attack the three of them, his other hand, which had been left idle, casually slapped in the direction in which the three of them had retreated. The slap immediately brought about a terrifying handprint that seemed to contain boundless reincarnation. It was the reincarnation palm that Jian Wushuang comprehended. The palm covered the void where the three of them were. The three great emperors couldn't dodge at all. Hung. The universe became silent, and the entire void cracked. The three great emperors that were engulfed by the reincarnation palm turned into flowing light and burst out. As they burst out, their faces grew pale, and their auras were obviously much weaker than before. In merely 2 breaths of time, the three great emperors who had besieged Jian Wushuang were severely injured. Just then, Ling Zong and the others rushed over at their top speeds from Imperial Cabinet arrived. Jian Wushuang. Ling Zong stared, and his face distorted. He was just like a raging lion. He roared and charged to the front. He instantly turned into a huge beast and pounced at Jian Wushuang. Just as he approached Jian Wushuang, he clenched his battle axe with both his hands. Virum! The color of the universe changed. There was a huge, dark, terrifying axe shadow that appeared in the void above. It was slashing at Jian Wushuang. When the axe shadow descended, it broke the universe apart and it became yin and yang. Jian Wushuang was right below the terrifying axe shadow. He lifted his head and took a look at the descending axe shadow. Then he smiled faintly. We shall see if your axe skill is great, or if my sword principle is stronger by a notch, Jian Wushuang said, and wielded his sword. A resplendent sword shadow suddenly lit up. Xian Luo sword principle, the one that focused on power the most. Blast rainstorm. The same sword principle performed by the same person. However, the difference was that Jian Wushuang had let his divine power and his ancient tribe bloodline power pour out to his limit. His power and strength, which were above any ordinary great emperor's, exploded. Bang! There was a loud bang. Both parties collided in the void. Then, a huge space-time black hole spread open mercilessly. In an instant, it swallowed the surrounding universe. The surrounding void drowned within. In the middle of the space-time black hole, there was a figure that staggered and retreated. He took more than a dozen steps back, and every single step was 10,000 li apart. He finally stopped with great effort. This person was the beast like a bald man, Ling Zong. This Ling Zong looked at his quivering battle axe after he steadied himself. He was greatly astonished. He couldn't believe everything that had happened. He went all out to compete for power against Jian Wushuang, and had retreated from one stroke of Jian Wushuang's attack. How was this possible? This be asterisk starred. Ling Zong stared at Jian Wushuang. In his head, he recalled the 2 times when Head came across Jian Wushuang. Chapter 2046 Vented Anger. Ever since Jian Wushuang had come to Three Emperors' World, Ling Zong had met him thrice. The first time, there were 6 great emperors that had besieged Jian Wushuang in Silver-Winged God Mansion. Then, Jian Wushuang's power was merely at ordinary great emperor level. He didn't care about Jian Wushuang. At most, Jian Wushuang was only scary in terms of his defense power. Hence, the 6 great emperors besieged him, but could do nothing to him. The second time was 30 years back. During the war, Jian Wushuang had once fought against him. Jian Wushuang was his match then. Now it was the 3rd time Head fought against Jian Wushuang. They fought head-on again, and he went all out. However, he was beaten back by Jian Wushuang with 1 stroke. What's going on? If he hadn't known about Jian Wushuang's background and situation, he would have suspected Jian Wushuang had been hiding his true power since the beginning. In merely tens of years of time, one who only had ordinary great emperor power that he didn't care about had advanced by leaps and bounds to beyond his power. Hee, I thought you were amazing. But from what it seems now, you're SOSO. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly at Ling Zong. Ling Zong was triggered and spat. Let's fight against him altogether. I don't believe that we can't kill him. Then Long Zong attacked again. At the same time, the great emperors around him charged at Jian Wushuang with billowing murderous intention, including the 3 great emperors, who were severely injured by Jian Wushuang. Hence, the scene where 13 great emperors joined forces to besiege one person 30 years ago reappeared. The person who was besieged was still Jian Wushuang. However, 30 years had passed. Jian Wushuang was no longer the person had been before. Naturally, the situation was different. Haha, come on. During the last fight, we didn't fight a hearty battle. This time, I shall play with all of you heartily. Jian Wushuang laughed as he was emboldened. Compared to 30 years ago, his divine body had improved tremendously, and the same applied to his divine power. If it was said that there were 13 great emperors who had joined forces to besiege him back then, and it would take them a while to possibly kill him, he might not even have been killed if the 13 great emperors joined forces to besiege him for 3 days and 3 nights straight. On top of that, Jian Wushuang's current power was on an entirely different level. Whoop! Whoop, whoop. Jian Wushuang continuously wielded Blood Mountain Sword on the battlefield with billowing force. The sword principle that he performed had 4 moves. It was the 4 moves in Xian Luo sword principle. However, the 4 moves were like one. It was simply perfect. The 13 Great Emperor performed various powerful attacks. Jian Wushuang would block it if he could. If he couldn't, he would resist it by using his divine body directly. The sword principle that he performed was shocking. Be careful. Don't fight head-on with him. He is too powerful. This be asterisk starred. I am a great emperor, and I was severely injured by one stroke of his when I fought him head-on. He is every more powerful than Ling Zong. Hurry up and dodge. There were angry roars and shrill screams on the battlefield. The ones who made the noises were naturally the 13 great emperors from Three Emperors' World. They fought with their all. They besieged Jian Wushuang, just like they had done 30 years ago. However, they had realized that the situation was entirely different from 30 years ago. 30 years ago, Jian Wushuang was suppressed. He was only on the defensive and taking hits. He had survived for so long only because of his defensive power. But then, although he was still suppressed, Jian Wushuang had the power to counterattack. Every time he fought back, the sword principle was ridiculously powerful. Besides Ling Zong and the tall and sturdy middle-aged man, who could barely block it, the other great emperors would be severely injured if they were to take the hit alone. Hence, from the beginning of the fight until then, it was less than 10 breaths' time, but there were 2 people who were severely injured among the 13 great emperors. Their fighting power was badly damaged. On the contrary, Jian Wushuang was still perfectly intact, and he was energetic. His fighting power was terrifying too. The great emperors began to panic. In the void far from the battlefield, the cultivators in early and middle stage chaotic realm on Imperial Peak were astonished by the fight. They were watching the battle in disbelief. Isn't that the person who was killed by the great emperors back then? Yeah, it's him. He intentionally disguised himself as an ordinary cultivator in early stage chaotic realm and entered Imperial Peak back then. But he died 30 years back. Now, not only is he not dead, but he has also become stronger. He is ridiculously powerful. The 13 great emperors in Peak Chaotic Realm joined forces, but couldn't capture him. On top of that, they were injured by him in such a short time span. His power, many of them gasped in admiration. Among the crowd, the most astonished person was Lin Tianhao. He looked at Jian Wushuang, who was invincible like a demon, and he shivered in fear. Monster! This show is simply a monster, Lin Tianhao muttered. In the middle of the battlefield, bang! Jian Wushuang's sword that brought about boundless power slashed at a great emperor's divine weapon again. The great emperor's body quivered, and he spat a mouthful of blood. Then he quickly fell down. Another great emperor was severely injured by Jian Wushuang again. Haha, such a hearty fight. Jian Wushuang's hysterical laughter spread. In the 2 previous fights, I was suppressed and hit. I felt so aggrieved. Now I can finally teach you a lesson and vent my anger. Jian Wushuang felt great. It was true that he had been dogged by these great emperors relying on his advantage of having near immortality during the last 2 fights. In other words, he was plainly being hit. He had been full of misery during the last 2 fights. He naturally felt aggrieved. However, he wasn't powerful enough. He had no choice but to be beaten up. Now, it was different. During the fight, although he was still mainly taking hits, at least he could counterattack. On top of that, he had injured a few of them. If it continued, he wouldn't die, and the great emperors in front of him would be injured by him one by one. To be able to do that, Jian Wushuang considered taking revenge. I vented my anger and taught you a lesson. I shall not fool around with you any more. Jian Wushuang sneered. He suddenly plunged to the front. Want to leave? The surrounding great emperors instantly responded when they saw Jian Wushuang's actions. Stop him. We absolutely can't let him escape. Ling Zong roared. The great emperors from Three Emperors whirled, looked glum, and charged at Jian Wushuang madly. Jian Wushuang smirked in disdain at the sight. 30 years ago, you could have stopped me. But now, no one can stop me if I want to leave. Chapter 2047, Take Action. Personally, I want to leave and no one can stop me. Jian Wushuang said with absolute confidence. His confidence wasn't only because his current power could make him fearless under the besiegement of the 13 great emperors, but more importantly, because the Emperor Supreme Rock had shattered. Not only was the Emperor Supreme Rock the source of energy that drove the Dark Millstone, it was also the main factor of the great formation surrounding Imperial Peak and Imperial City. Once the Emperor Supreme Rock shattered, the great formation in Imperial Peak and Imperial City would simply be nothing. Without the surrounding great formation, the 13 great emperors wanted him to stay. That was simply a joke. Go away. Jian Wushuang let out an angry roar. His voice contained boundless power, as though the universe was angry. There were originally 4 great emperors in front of him. However, when they saw that Jian Wushuang had filled the air with terrifying sword intention, they pounced forward. Step back. Hurry up and retreat. The 4 great emperors retreated without hesitation. Even when 4 great emperors joined forces, they wouldn't have the courage to stop Jian Wushuang. Rubbish! Ling Zong, who was following Jian Wushuang, saw it and he cursed. However, he was sure that even if the 4 great emperors were to block Jian Wushuang, they would only be beaten back by Jian Wushuang in an instant. Jian Wushuang was raging with anger. He plunged out of Imperial City directly. The 13 great emperors followed Jian Wushuang, but they were merely following him. After a short while, Jian Wushuang escaped from Imperial Peak and left Imperial City. He continued to plunge into the boundless, vast region in Three Emperors' world. The 13 great emperors could do nothing about him. Ling Zong, the tall and sturdy middle-aged man flying alongside with Ling Zong, looked distressed. Jian Wushuang is much stronger than 30 years ago. We can't stop him. Report to the higher-ups. Ling Zong's body quivered. His eyebrows were tightly knitted. Even though he was unwilling to yield, he knew that whatever the tall and sturdy middle-aged man said was true. Report then. Ling Zong sighed and took out a token to send a message. In the dark void, the 3 overlords sat there. Then, the 3 of their faces grew grave. They were in the Dark Millstone. The 3 of them were controlling the Dark Millstone. But as the Emperor Supreme Rock shattered and the Dark Millstone lost its energy source, it completely stopped. If they couldn't find another huge Emperor Supreme Rock, they wouldn't make the Dark Millstone move again. Jian Wushuang didn't die. The brawny Demon King let out an earth-shaking roar. He stared and said, "That bunch of rubbish. What did they do 30 years ago? Didn't they say that they killed Jian Wushuang? Why is he still living well right now? He even broke the Emperor Supreme Rock. He destroyed the Emperor Supreme Rock, and he left Imperial Peak and Imperial City openly? Ling Zong and the other 12 in Peak Chaotic Realm couldn't stop him, but they have to get help from us. Rubbish! A bunch of rubbish!" Demon King cursed and roared. The blurry blood man next to him gave out a chilly aura. "We put in so much time and effort in building the Dark Millstone, but Jian Wushuang ruined it. Our hard word is in vain. Jian Wushuang deserves to die." Demon King and the blurry blood man harbored great hatred against Jian Wushuang. Only Lung Rukshu's eyes were twinkling with a different emotion. She kept quiet for a while before she spoke. As it already happened, it's too late for us to complain. Let's think about what we should do next. As the dark millstone stopped, Sanctuary Alliance will definitely take action. We'd better get ready. Demon King nodded in agreement, and he calmed down. How about this? The two of you stay here and deal with Sanctuary Alliance. As for Jian Wushuang, he'll take care of him personally. I'd like to see how powerful is this Jian Suhuang. Why the 13 great emperors from 3 Emperors' World could do nothing about him. Then Demon King didn't care about Lung Rushue and the blurry Bloodman's respond, but plunged to 3 Emperors' World immediately. The blurry Bloodman didn't bother much, but Lung Rukshu's eyes dilated in shock. She originally intended to fight against Jian Wushuang, but Demon King took the initiative and went ahead. She naturally didn't speak. Jian Wushuang, oh Jian Wushuang, you didn't 30 years ago under that kind of situation. You are impressive. It seems like I really belittled you, Lung Rushua muttered, but she smirked in a malicious smile. 3 Emperors' World was in complete chaos. In the palace, in the nearby void around the dark millstone, the great emperors who were the higher-ups of Sanctuary Alliance gathered there. Emperor Bai was naturally the leader. The great emperors from Sanctuary Alliance were gathered by Emperor Bai in a sudden. Most of them attended in their consciousness incarnation. Then all of them looked confused, as they didn't know why Emperor Bai suddenly gathered them. When everyone was there, Emperor Bai spoke and looked around. I have something to tell all of you. The Emperor Supreme rock shattered. The dark millstone stopped. What? A tossed stone raised 1,000 ripples. The surrounding great emperors looked astonished. Ever since 30 years ago, when they found out that the 4 members' troop that they sent fell into the enemy's trap, and both Jian Wushuang and Great Emperor Ji Luo died, they didn't have any hope about destroying the Emperor Supreme Rock. On the contrary, they focused all their effort on gathering experts and bringing the powerful ones in eternal chaotic world. However, they had yet to fully prepare after 30 years, but Emperor Bai told them that the Emperor Supreme Rock was shattered and the dark millstone had stopped. They were in disbelief at first when they heard the news, but they finally confirmed when they checked the dark millstone. The dark millstone isn't moving anymore. It really stopped. It really stopped. The great emperors were thrilled in happiness. Some even shed tears of joy. The dark millstone was a really big threat against eternal chaotic world. If it continued to spin, the entire eternal chaotic world would vanish into thin air, and it wouldn't take long for it to happen. Hence, they had been very anxious, and they had been thinking of ways for the dark millstone to stop. They already put in a lot of hard work to make it happen. Then, when they found out that the dark millstone finally stopped, how could they not feel surprised? Of course, they were also confused when they were surprised. Chapter 2048, Demon King Chen Yu. Mr. Emperor Bai, what's going on? Yes, who destroyed the Emperor Supreme Rock? Who would be so capable as to be able to destroy the Emperor Supreme Rock in 3 Emperors' World's lair? The confused and curious gazes fixed upon Emperor Bai. The one who destroyed the Emperor Supreme Rock was Jian Wushuang. Emperor Bai replied, Jian Wushuang? How is that possible? Didn't Jian Wushuang die? How could he destroy the Emperor Supreme Rock? He didn't die. The great emperors were shocked, and they expressed their disbelief. Emperor Bai explained, Jian Wushuang didn't die. As for the reason and process, it is inconvenient for me to tell you. In short, Jian Wushuang destroyed the Emperor Supreme Rock, and the dark millstone stopped because of that. Jian Wushuang is in the 3 Emperors' World, and he is being chased after by a large bunch of experts from 3 Emperors' World. Hence, Sanctuary Alliance has to send experts in to take him on immediately. Sword Emperor destroyed the Emperor's supreme rock. In short, he saved the entire eternal chaotic world. Now that he is being chased after, we, of course, have to go and get him. Ancestor Tian Chun was the first to reply. It's an obligation we won't shirk. We have to bring Jian Wushuang back. The other great emperors stood up one after another. Although some of the great emperors had borne grudges against Jian Wushuang before, they would cast their personal resentment aside before their enemies. Jian Wushuang had performed extraordinary deeds. As he was in danger, they, of course, had to go all out to save him. I already got in touch with Jian Wushuang through Emperor Jiu Qiao's doppelganger. He will come to this region at his fastest speed. Emperor Bai waved, and a huge constellation map appeared in the void in front of them. Emperor Jiu Qiao drew the constellation map. It was the result of Emperor Jiu Qiao being in hiding in the Three Emperors world for 30 years. All god mansions and regions in Three Emperors world were recorded on the constellation map. Emperor Bai pointed at the region called Bronze Heart. The Bronze Heart region was located at the border of Three Emperors world. Then the dark millstone stopped, and the surrounding great formation had already stopped spinning. The higher-ups in Sanctuary Alliance could barge into Three Emperors world directly. They could pierce the outer layer of the pavilion and reached Bronze Heart region easily. Depart immediately. Rush there at your fastest speed. Emperor Bai commanded. Understood. The surrounding great emperors nodded simultaneously. Mr. Emperor Bai, how about you? Are you going personally? Red Dragon King suddenly looked at Emperor Bai. I have a more important task to do. Emperor Bai replied. The great emperors didn't pursue further. Then the original body of all great emperors gathered at their fastest speeds. Then they departed to Three Emperors world. Emperor Bai watched the great emperors leave, and his eyes were glistening in a strange way. In Three Emperors world, Jian Wushuang rushed out of Imperial City and continued to plunge forward. He had been flying for more than half a day, and he had passed many regions. Sword Emperor, Emperor Bai told me to inform you that everything is going according to plan. Emperor Jiu Qiao sent a message over. Great, Jian Wushuang smiled, and he looked behind him. The total of 13 great emperors were following Ling Zong and the tall and sturdy middle-aged man's lead, continuing to chase after him closely. These guys are so persistent. Jian Wushuang smiled. The 13 great emperors wouldn't be a threat to him. However, Jian Wushuang knew that the 13 great emperors definitely had another purpose in following behind him when they knew they could do nothing about him. As expected, just as Jian Wushuang crossed into another region, dong, 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 there were heavy footsteps from the void in front. The footsteps were obviously from someone stomping on the void and rushing over. The power of every single step was extremely powerful. Jian Wushuang immediately lifted his head and realized that there was a 2-meter-tall brawny man with bronze skin that appeared at the end of his sight. The brawny man was muscular and had a mustache and beard. His hair was all over the place, too. He looked just like a savage man. As the savage man plunged over from the void in front, every footstep shattered boundless void below his feet. There was a terrifying rage that spread from him. Even Jian Wushuang was shocked when he felt the rage approaching him. This person, Jian Wushuang, stared at the savage man, who was getting closer. His gut feeling told him that the person in front of him was very scary. He was far scarier than the 13 great emperors behind him combined. However, the 13 great emperors behind Jian Wushuang were thrilled when they saw him. It's Demon King. Mr. Demon King has come. Ha! Mr. Demon came personally. Jian Wushuang will be dead. Mr. Demon King, how long has it been since we've seen him descend personally? The great emperors looked at the savage man with boundless enthusiasm and worship. The same applied to Ling Zong. Are you Jian Wushuang? The savage man spoke in a loud and bright voice. He stopped right in front of Jian Wushuang and looked down at Jian Wushuang with his cold gaze. His boundless might pressed onto Jian Wushuang at the first instant. Who are you? Jian Wushuang's face was solemn as he stared at the savage man in front. I am Chen Yu. You can also call me Demon King Chen Yu, the savage man said coldly. Jian Wushuang, I have heard things about you. I have to admit that you are truly a top genius. I'm afraid there aren't many who have greater talent than you from the era I'm from. But it's a pity that you and I are not on the same side. So, I can only let you die. Demon King Chen Yes voice reverberated through the universe. As Demon King Chen Yu spoke, he moved. There was a great distance to get to Jian Wushuang, but Demon King took a huge stride, and he appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. At the same time, he clenched his hand, and a huge fist instantly broke the air. It brought about a boundless demonic cloud and broke everything in front of Jian Wushuang. Then, it slashed at Jian Wushuang's face. So fast, there was a flash of shock in Jian Wushuang's eyes, but he instantly recovered. Humph! Jian Wushuang humphed coldly and wielded his sword. There was a unique sword intention that soared up. Then Jian Wushuang turned into a huge whirlpool that swallowed everything. Xian Luo sword principle, mixed elements spirit. Bang! There was a loud bang. The huge fist collided with Jian Wushuang's sword light brutally. A terrifying power suddenly exploded. Chapter 2049 Demon King's Power. At the very moment when both parties collided, Jian Wushuang could distinctly feel an unprecedented power pounding at him madly. Even if Jian Wushuang performed mixed element spirit with his all, he wouldn't be able to resist the power. There would still be parts of the power that would transmit to Jian Wushuang's divine body through his hands. Jian Wushuang's divine power was extremely fierce, but he had suffered some damage. Although his divine body had instantly recovered with the operation of divine power, Demon King Chen Yes punch did cause damage to his divine body. On top of that, Demon King Chen Yes fist didn't hit his body, but merely collided with his sword principle. The impact injured his divine body. Such power would absolutely be a notch stronger than when Jian Wushuang exploded his full power. It seems that I belittled Three Emperors' world. The Three Emperors' world has even scarier great emperors. Jian Wushuang's gaze was cold. His figure quivered. He stood steadily in the void. Then, he suddenly turned illusionary. He was just like a spirit. Jian Wushuang appeared next to Demon King Chen Yu, and there was a sharp gleam from Blood Mountain Sword. The chilly gleam surged, and there was a drop of blood faintly condensing on the tip of the blade. Xian Luo Sword Principle, the move that focused on instant explosion and piercing. The name of the move was Extreme Blood. Such a joke. Demon King Chen Yu smirked in disdain. Then, he waved, and a large dark cloud came over. The cold sword light that Jian Wushuang had performed was smashed by a large demonic region before it appeared before Demon King Chen Yu. The power was diminished tremendously, and in the end, the entire stroke shattered. To be able to take a punch of mine head-on, not too shabby. But in the end, you still have to die. Demon King Chen, yes, demonic power, was impressive. Just as he spoke, his originally 2-meter-tall figure suddenly increased and became 10 zhang tall. His skin turned into an ancient bronze color, and he had a total of 8 arms that extended outwards. The 8 arms were holding various weapons. There was a broadsword, a huge club, a bronze mirror, a large seal. In between Demon King Chen Yes eyebrows, the third eye suddenly opened, and it was hanging vertically. There was a crimson glow to it, and it could charm anyone. Die! Demon King Chen Yu roared, and his 8 arms moved at the same time. He instantly came before Jian Wushuang, and the various divine weapons swept down. The broadsword tainted the surrounding void with blood, and the broadsword continuously magnified and covered the sky. It formed overlapping sword shadows, and they instantly slashed. The black club was brutal. It turned into a bolt of black lightning and suddenly struck. The bronze mirror gave out a purple ray of light. The purple light contained an extermination aura, and it charged at Jian Wushuang. The seal was originally an ordinary seal. As the yellowish-brown power filled the air, the seal turned into a huge mountain and crushed down on Jian Wushuang. The 8 various divine weapons in Demon King Chen Yes hands were performing different tricks. Their powers were all terrifying. Looking at the intense attack, Jian Wushuang was shocked but not fearful. Virum! Jian Wushuang's divine body grew tremendously too. Then he had 9 heads and 18 arms that popped up instantly. All 18 arms were holding swords. Come on! He roared. Jian Wushuang and Demon King Chen fought fiercely. Even though Jian Wushuang had 18 arms and his opponent only had 8, so he looked like he had the upper hand. But in actual fact, the 18 arms increased Jian Wushuang power to a limit. However, Demon King Chen, yes, was different. His 8 arms wielded various types of divine weapons and could perform the power of the divine weapon flawlessly and fiercely. Bang! 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 There were continuous loud bangs, and the entire universe was in a divine power storm. There was a terrifying power and aura that constantly spread, which caused the 13 great emperors who were watching near the battlefield to be fearful. There was no doubt that Jian Wushuang's power was beyond Lingzong's or any one of the 13 great emperors. Then Demon King Chen Yu, who was fighting against him, was even scarier. He was one of the 3 emperors that 3 emperors worshipped. Hum! There was another roar. On the battlefield, Jian Wushuang looked solemn. This person, he is so powerful. He is at least a dozen times stronger than Lingzong. He is much stronger than me too. I am suppressed when I fight against him. Jian Wushuang was in disbelief. After he had broken through and gotten to the second stage, his power had increased tremendously. Even when the 13 great emperors joined forces, he could be fearless and he could even injure them. With his power, he thought that besides Emperor Bai, Emperor 13, and those ancient old monsters who were in a deep sleep and yet to wake up, there couldn't be anyone who could be his match in eternal chaotic world. However, Demon King Chen Yu, before him, was stronger than him, much stronger than him. There's such a powerful expert in 3 emperors' world. Jian Wushuang muttered, and he had already thought of retreating. He knew that his power wasn't as strong as his opponent's, and there were 13 great emperors waiting at the side. Jian Wushuang wouldn't continue to fight against Demon King Chen Yu stupidly. There was a billowing divine power with an ancient tribe bloodline power that exploded from Jian Wushuang. Behind Jian Wushuang, there were lofty ancient tribe shadows. There seemed to be more than 100 or 1,000 shadows. Ancient god unique skill, universal laws. Die! Jian Wushuang slapped, and reincarnation palm flew forward. The ancient god shadows behind him followed his actions and slapped their palms forward. Every palm contained boundless power. The palms moved to bury Demon King Chen Yu simultaneously. As for Jian Wushuang, he retreated as the universal laws performed. Go away! Demon King Chen, yes, power increased, and the 8 arms waved continuously to shatter the palms moving toward him. At the same time, he saw Jian Wushuang retreating. You can't escape. Demon King Chen, you was soaring with murderous intention. Just as he roared, one of his 8 arms clenched a jade ruler. The jade ruler merged with the universe, and there was yellow sand that instantly swept out. The boundless sand swept out in madness. It instantly formed a huge yellow sand prison that covered the universe. It naturally covered Jian Wushuang too. Chapter 2050, Yellow Sand Realm. Demon King Chunyu is pretty impressive. Jian Wushuang's face grew glum as he looked at the surrounding yellow sand realm. He could feel how sturdy the yellow sand realm was. Within the yellow sand realm, an ordinary great emperor, or even a great emperor that was on Ling Zong level, might not stand a chance to escape. However, Jian Wushuang was different. You want to make me stay with that kind of trick? You're dreaming. Jian Wushuang roared. He waved his 18 arms at the same time and slashed at the yellow sand realm. It was a round of brutal hits. The fierce sword lights slashed at the yellow sand realm, and it began to quiver vigorously. However, it wasn't damaged. Jian Wushuang didn't give up, but instantly began his second round of attacks. Boy die! Just as Jian Wushuang attacked the yellow sand realm crazily, Demon King Chinyu appeared behind him, and there was a fierce attack that instantly descended. Jian Wushuang had no choice but to block Demon King's attack while he figured out a way to break the yellow sand realm. Their fight was extremely fierce. Outside the yellow sand realm, Ling Zong and the other 13 great emperors were watching. They could see the huge yellow sand realm in front of them. However, they didn't know what was happening within the yellow sand realm. They couldn't see with their naked eyes, nor could they probe with their soul power. They could only hear the terrifying roars and clanging noises from the yellow sand realm that struck fear into them. The roaring continued for dozens of breaths of time. Finally, hung. There was another loud bang. There was a huge hole that tore open on the yellow sand realm. Jian Wushuang plunged out of the hole and leaped. Demon King Chen, you looked angry, and he reined back yellow sand realm as jade ruler. He went to pursue Jian Wushuang again. As Demon King Chen Yu was chasing after him, he commanded, immediately arrange for people to set up in front to stop Jian Wushuang. Otherwise, we'll likely lose him. Demon King Chen Yu was offended when he gave that command. He was taking care of Jian Wushuang personally. Since he was Jian Wushuang personally, he was determined to win. However, after the vigorous fight in the yellow sand realm, Demon King Chen, you wouldn't be able to kill Jian Wushuang by himself. This boy's defense is too strong. Demon King Chen, you clenched his hands, and he was still thinking of the scene that had happened in the yellow sand realm. In the yellow sand realm, Jian Wushuang was fighting with him while he was thinking of a way to break the yellow sand realm in the beginning. But not long after, Jian Wushuang seemed to see how sturdy the yellow sand realm was, and he knew that he would need a long time to break the realm if he continued to fight. Hence, he made an insane decision, which was to ignore Demon King Chen Ye's attack. He didn't bother about Demon King Chen Ye's brutal attacks and let them hit his divine body. Jian Wushuang focused on the yellow sand realm directly. After a few rounds of attack, he finally broke a hole in the yellow sand realm. As he was trying to break into the yellow sand realm, he took almost 100 of Demon King Chen Ye's attacks. Based on Demon King Chen Ye's terrifying power, if one hit of his were to land on the divine body of an ordinary great emperor, those who had weaker defense powers would have been dead. Even those who were stronger wouldn't survive after 2 to 3 hits. However, Jian Wushuang had taken almost 100 of Demon King Chen Ye's hits. Just how insane was his defense power? With Jian Wushuang's defense power, as long as he wasn't stupid enough to fight vigorously with Demon King Chen Yu, he could totally escape. Hence, Demon King Chen Yu commanded the great emperors in 3 Emperors' World to stop Jian Wushuang at the front. as long as they trapped Jian Wushuang and left him no chance to escape. No matter how powerful his defensive power was, he would reach his limit. By then, it would be Jian Wushuang's death. Jian Wushuang looked like he was still at his peak, and his aura wasn't weakened at all. On top of that, his running speed was equally shocking, but he looked extremely solemn. Demon King Chen, attack power is so strong, Jian Wushuang muttered. He couldn't help but steal a glance at Demon King Chen, behind him. After he reached the second stage, his divine power had increased tremendously again. In addition to 5 gem armor, his defense power was terrifyingly powerful. If it was an ordinary Great Emperor or an extremely powerful Great Emperor like Ling Zong who hit him, it would just feel like a scratch. He wouldn't care much about it. Even if there were 100 attacks, he could be at ease. However, Demon King Chen, 100 attacks in the Yellow Sand region, severely injured his divine body. Although his severely injured divine body could be quickly recovered with his divine power, Jian Wushuang's divine power had expanded tremendously. During the time in the Yellow Sand realm, Jian Wushuang's divine power had gone by 30%. If a similar situation were to happen a few more times, he was afraid that he couldn't take it. However, luckily, he escaped from the Yellow Sand realm. Then, Demon King Chen was only following behind him. Even if he caught up with him, he wouldn't be able to stop him. Now, I only need to figure out a way to get to the border of 3 Emperors' world and meet up with the experts of Sanctuary Alliance, Jian Wushuang muttered, and there was a strange gleam twinkling in his eyes. He plunged at a high speed. Judging from his travel direction, he was obviously charging at Bronze Heart region. Bronze Heart region was a region closest to the border in 3 Emperors' world. Emperor Bai commanded the great emperors in Sanctuary Alliance to rush to Bronze Heart region to meet with Jian Wushuang. Then, in the vast void in Bronze Heart region, there was a total of 7 figures standing side by side. The 7 people's auras were fierce. They were all great emperors, and they weren't great emperors from Sanctuary Alliance, but from 3 Emperors' world. The 7 great emperors from 3 Emperors' world floated solemnly as they looked at the sky afar. They were obviously for something. They were naturally waiting for Jian Wushuang's arrival. However, Jian Wushuang was still quite far away from Bronze Heart region. Even the great emperors from Sanctuary Alliance had just departed not long ago. They probably had yet to pass through the outer layer of the Dark Millstone to enter 3 Emperor world, let alone to get to Jian Wushuang in Bronze Heart region. However, 3 Emperors world had assigned a total of 7 great emperors to wait there. The 7 of them who knew battle formations.